G'day there guys, it's your Aussie Hubby Markee, back at it again with another r/I-don't-work-here-lady story. Anyway guys, with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some bloody good I-don't-work-here-lady stories. Now, our first post is by user SerenePhoenix89, titled, Karen, do you need a friend? This is what I get for going to the store instead of ordering groceries to be delivered. So with the corona stuff going on, I've been dutifully staying in my apartment like a decent human being, and limiting any time I spend outside. Unfortunately, this has been hell on my partner's mental health, and the depression is real. So I decided, screw it. We're both food boys and he likes cookies. There's a Giant the next block over. So I get dressed, put on my sweet Disney mask, go on Etsy, the designs are wonderful, and head out to get my partner some cookies. Now, for reference, my style is hobo chic, so sweats, sneaks, graphic tee, and a hoodie. Keep that in mind. I go into Giant and head for the cookie aisle. I'm considering if I want to do Oreos, or if I want to be fancy and get Pepperidge Farm. These are important questions of life. When an older woman, who is very short, asks if I can grab something for her off the top shelf. Of course I say yes because she was nice enough to ask. I'm a simple guy, and I hand her the item and go back to my contemplation. As I decide to get them both, I hear the "Hem." I've worked in retail, and I've worked food services, so I know the sound of a wild Karen when I hear one. I say to her, "What's up?" "What's up? Is that how you treat—" Look, I have zero in the way of spoons, and even less patience. Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to look at me and try that line of thinking again. Who the fuck? Hey. Let me tell you what we're not gonna do. I need you to woo and chill. I know you know better. Karen still looks mad, but doesn't say anything. Now, I can help you find an employee if you want, but what you will not do is yell at me. I am only here to get cookies. I point at my stomach, cause I'm a thicky boy. Not that I need them though. Karen cracks a small smile. Gotcha. But at this point, I'm committed to this. I didn't choose thick life, it chose me. Karen starts to crack and laughs a little before all of a sudden starts to tear up. I'm 6 foot, 300 pounds, and black. A crying Karen is a bit detrimental to my continued freedom. You okay? Yeah. It's just that this is the first time I've laughed in a while. My husband is in the hospital. The virus? Yeah. I'm not sure if it means much coming from some cookie guy, but I hope he recovers. Karen smiled and walked away. While she didn't apologize for popping off, I'm glad it didn't escalate further. Her husband's condition doesn't excuse what I'm sure would have been an awful tirade, but it does serve as a reminder that crap is bad for everyone. Our next post is by user CherryBabe03, titled, A Karen Tries to Get the Owner's Daughter Fired. So, I'm not 100% sure if I'm putting this on the right one, but I hope I have. So background, this was about 2 years ago when my dad owned a pub. I was 14 and old enough to chip in by taking orders for the restaurant, cleaning tables, etc. And one day we had just opened, and my dad had gone down to the basement to change one of the kegs. As I was sitting at the bar talking to our new employee, showing them what to say, my dad had taught me himself and the employee was barely out of college by the way, the employee asked if it was okay if she quickly went down to the bathroom since there were not any customers. It was only 4 PM and the locals normally start pouring in at 6. So, I said it was okay. As I'm drinking my cola, Karen arrives and says, "Excuse me? Hello. I want a," lists her drink, "and be quick with it." "I'm sorry, I'm not working." She cuts me off. "Stop lying. I've seen you clean the tables. I know you work here." I'm shocked and I'm like, "I'm sorry, Miss Karen, but I'm not working today, and even if I was, I couldn't get you your drink since I'm not allowed behind the bar." "Stop lying. You're here, so you must be working. Get me my drink." "Miss Karen, She cuts me off again. "You're so rude. I know the owner. You know, I could get you fired. At this point, our new employee returns. I'll call them Ni for nice employee. Ni is like, hello, welcome to XX Inn. What can I get for you? Get me the owner. I want this girl fired. So I gave Ni a look that basically said, get him, my dad. I was holding in tears at this point, and Ni could see that. Ni's like, I'll just grab him from downstairs. One moment. Good. Turns out my dad had been upstairs the entire time Karen had been here and heard it all. What's the meaning of this? He firmly asked Karen. Mr. R, my dad's last name. This employee of yours needs to be, and then my dad cut her off. She's not my employee. What? But I've seen her clean up and take orders and... Dad cuts her off again. That's because she's my daughter? Karen turns to look at me, who is still trying to calm down, and speaks. If you really are his daughter, then why couldn't you get me my drink? Ni, me, and my dad was shocked, and in disbelief by this, but I managed to speak. I'm almost in tears and I'm like, I'm bloody 14, it's illegal. Karen went pale, and before she could speak, my dad did. Now get out of my pub, you're banned for the rest of the month. We haven't seen her since, mainly because about 10 months later my dad sold the pub. Edit, the reason why I cried was because I have high-functioning autism and I'm not good with conflict. Banned for a month? I would have banned her for the rest of her miserable life. My dad's never been that harsh with women, plus she had only been in 2 or 3 times before, so a month's ban was enough of a punishment in my dad's eyes. Your dad sounds like a good man, but I still think he treated Karen better than she deserved. I'm glad she didn't come in again before he sold the pub. Do people commonly lie about not working at a place they actually do work at during their actual shift? Almost every story here involves a Karen shouting "stop lying" when informed that a person is not the employee, but I've never heard it actually happening. I think in a Karen's mind, people are always lying. It is just extremely difficult for some, or maybe even many people, to admit that they might have done a mistake, so they simply stick to their story no matter what. Our next post is by user Demi Daydream, titled, No Karen, I cannot help you go to the bathroom. In high school, I worked for a national movie theatre chain. While they've since changed them, the uniform at the time consisted of navy blue trousers and a red polo. Nearby, in the same plaza, there were several restaurants and fast food places, and among these was a Panda Express. During my 15-minute break, I'd been at Panda and in line ordering and waiting to pay for my food. I was minding my own business and hoping that I could get out of there quickly enough to have time to inhale my orange chicken prior to darting back to the box office when my break ended. I'm a bit zoned out, so I became rather startled upon an abrupt ahem, accompanied by a tap on my shoulder. I turned and took in the sight of what we all know now to be a Karen. Oh, sorry, was I in your way? This is my default line of thinking, and I have terrible social anxiety. I said I need to go to the bathroom. Well, it's over that way, I think. I know that, obviously. I'm confused at this point, because I'm not at all in the way of her getting to the bathroom, and now she's admitted to knowing where it is, and I don't know what... She's shouting, I need the key. At this point, it's time for me to pay for my food. Remember, I'm on the outside of the glass/counter and waiting in a line. I figure maybe she's trying to get past me to ask the cashier for the bathroom key, so I step back and make room for her to go ahead of me, and she doesn't. I asked you for the bathroom key. Do you not know how to do your job? I finally realize that she thinks I'm employed there. I guess maybe it's because my work shirt is red and so are the employees' uniforms there. So I'm awkwardly pointing at the cinema logo on my polo, and I say I'm just on my break, I don't... She must not have looked at the gestures I'd made to the uniform of the company I'm actually employed by. Is that your manager? Turns to the cashier. Your employee is so rude? Just because she's on her break, she's refusing to help me go to the bathroom. She needs to be fired. Ma'am, she doesn't work here. Will you be purchasing a meal? Our restrooms are for customers only. Karen sputters, then turns and storms out of the place to terrorize some other establishment with a public restroom. They totally allowed people to use the bathrooms without buying food, by the way. I think they just wanted to have her leave the store because of the scene that she had just made. Good grief. I've never understood these sorts of people who seem to have a one-track mind paired with a severe case of tunnel vision. Good call on the cashier for coming up with that lie on the spot. It worked well against the wrath of Karen, and part of me hopes that she didn't find a restroom for a long while afterwards. Lol, I think she walked over to the Starbucks nearby. They definitely didn't have locks on theirs. It was a single stall though, and a busy movie weekend. The businesses nearby all served customers from the movie theater, so I'm sure she had to wait a while to use it. Nah, she probably just walked up to some poor schmuck standing in line in construction gear and demanded that he do his job and evict whoever was in the ladies' room. Yikes, Karen. And our next post is by Dark Lord Topher, titled, "But I actually did know where it was?" My local shop is a little Tesco. The staff in there wear navy blue trousers and tops. I don't work for Tesco. I work for a large 3PL, and our uniform is also navy blue trousers and top. Wandering around there after work one day, and a lady trundles up and asks where such and such items was. As I did actually know, I was able to send her in the right direction and thought nothing more of it. I got my stuff and headed for the tills, paid and left the store. As I was walking away, the lady was outside with her husband, and she called out to me, "Oh, I'm so sorry for bothering you. I didn't realize you'd finished your shift." The penny dropped for me at this point, but I just told her not to worry about it and carried on. As I walked away, I heard her husband saying to her, "He doesn't even work in there. Didn't you look at his t-shirt or his badge? It's got the 3PL name all over it. Not Tesco, you did." That is a sweet one. Glad you were able to help. I'm currently going through my brain trying to figure out which 3PL I know that would have blue trousers. Granted, if your 3PL means third-party logistics and not something else. It does mean third-party logistics. I'm in the UK. Okay, because I have to talk to a few 3PL tomorrow and was going to ask if they had to wear blue trousers. Before that sounds weird, I have very good rapport with them and I wouldn't be just a random person that I would be asking, you know? Our next post is by user Daisy's Vices, titled, "My Nature Valley shirt has people asking me for samples." One of my favorite shirts that I own is a green shirt with the Nature Valley logo on it. I got it for free from a university that I was attending as a giveaway for attending an event. I love that shirt so much, I tend to wear it as soon as I wash it, and it's a go-to errand shirt. Of course, this means that people mistake me for a Nature Valley rep. Is that a thing? And I've had so many people come up to me asking for coupons. If I was giving away free bars, free boxes, and to tell them how much they love Nature Valley. Not surprisingly, this stuff happens when I go to various grocery stores. My favorite encounter was one of these moments. I was at a health food store, and their employees also wear the same dark green colored shirt that my shirt is. A woman came up to me while I was unloading my groceries to pay and asked about the location of an item. Confused, I said, "Oh, I don't know." She gave me a look of disgust, looked me up and down really slowly, and then said, "Oh," and just kept staring at me. I continued to unload my basket, and I think she finally realized that 1, I was trying to pay for my groceries, and 2, my shirt was different from the employees' shirts. She must have got the idea and finally took off the other way. Have you tried Nature Valley cereal? It's amazing, although I think they make it with the bars that broke into pieces. Doesn't matter, it's like crack in a bag. Haven't tried it yet. Maybe I'll just ask the company to send me a sample. They should. You're a rep after all. Our next post is by user KevinL123, titled, "She Didn't Work There." This is a bit of the reverse of you would usually see here, as I am the customer in this story. Also, this is my first post here, so sorry if it isn't correctly formatted. A few years ago, my wife and me had an evening out at an average restaurant. Average in the prices, but the food was great. The restaurant was one big open room with large windows, and it was kinda split into 2 sections. But there were no physical barriers or anything like that. It was just one section with single tables for couples and another section with joined tables for larger groups. My wife and I were sitting at one table on the singular tables, and I had my back to the group section. We had just ordered an appetizer. It was a beautiful summer evening, but because the sun was setting, it was shining through the window directly into my eyes. I was looking around to ask the personnel if we could close the blinds a bit, and noticed one of the waitresses was already closing the blinds on another window. When she turned around, I politely asked her, "Excuse me, but would it be possible to also close the blinds on the other window? The sun is a bit annoying." She looked a bit confused, but she said, "Sure," and closed them. At this point, I noticed a bit of laughter at one of the tables at the group section, and when the waitress went back to the table where the laughter came from and sat down, it finally dawned on me that she wasn't a waitress at all, but just someone from the group at the table that went too close to the blinds because the sun was annoying her too. I turned red and immediately started to apologize, but luckily the entire group had a great sense of humor and laughed the whole thing away. Did your wife let the hilarity happen? With the sun in your face, your wife should have had the lady in perfect lighting. She was as confused as the lady was. I guess it looked like a scene from a sitcom. My wife being so confused why I was so rude against someone, and me being confused at my wife's confusion after I made a perfectly reasonable request in my eyes. That's gonna be a story for the grandkids. Thanks, Joy for Jesus. That's epic. Our next post is by user Spready, titled, "No ma'am, you've got the wrong number." My grandfather was a minister in Georgian SSR back in the 80s, and he was given a certain home phone number that to this day is considered very premium. In fact, so premium that for 30 years of owning our flat, my family has gotten several offers to sell it to pretty high prices. The last attempt by our rich neighbor was offered to acquire it for funny symbol 5k. While it's easy for people to contact you due to such a premium phone number, the last 2/3 of the numbers being simple zeros, there have been several calls in our home, as they'd be easily mistaking us for a large company. So we had their number ready just in case somebody would call us again by error. But today, as I was about to talk into a phone after picking it up, I was met with the typical Karen. She demanded to know why her products were not delivered yet, and she was going to sue the company, as if it had held up in a post-Soviet country court. I started talking, saying, "Sorry ma'am, but..." And then she went cutting me off. "I don't need any excuses. I want my phone delivered today. Ma'am, please listen to me." I tried to correct her, but before long she cut me off again. "Now connect me with your manager." "You've got the wrong number, ma'am. Goodbye." Finally, I was able to say it as she took a deep breath before she'd go for another round of blasting left and right. 2 minutes later, the phone clocked in the same number. I took it again, and before she was able to say anything, I, with my big old manly voice, told her, "Ma'am, for the second time, this phone number isn't registered to any company. The number is in my family's possession for 30 years. And I quickly turned it down, not even bothering to give her the company number. I never knew or even considered people would covet phone numbers like that before. I mean, I could sort of understand buying out somebody else's number if you wanted your business number to spell out something when written on a phone, but being willing to pay thousands of dollars for a number with a bunch of zeros at the end? Though they might begin to regret doing so if they started having to deal with many wrong numbers as you do. I hope your answering machine says something like, "You have reached last name family. This is not and has never been a company phone number. If you have a message for a member of the last name family, please leave it after the tone. If you wish to speak to a person at company, please hang up and go look for the correct phone number because this isn't it." Funny enough, we don't use answering machines here. Sounds like an answering machine would be a good investment in your case though. I'd consider getting one installed if you don't want to be constantly plagued by callers looking for that company. Our next post is by LesPaul182, titled, "I don't work here and I'll shame you for not helping." I was at a big box electronics store where the employees clad in blue polo shirts, seems to be a bloody trend here, are known to be expert ninjas in escaping customers. I was wearing a blue button down and unsuccessfully trying to find a network card. Not a specialized card, just an effing network card. When a customer asked me a question about video cards, I watched a blue-shirted employee slink behind an aisle to escape the customer. I got a little ticked and thought I'll do this jerk's job for him. I could see he was just standing in the other aisle listening, so I proceeded to help this nice but confused man. He needed a video card but didn't know what to buy. So I worked with him for what he was going to use it for and was able to suggest a card for him. Just as I finished, another customer who was patiently waiting for me to finish with the first customer had a hard drive question. After working with him for a few minutes, I had him sorted right as another customer started to ask me for help. By this time, a squadron of geeks stopped their work to watch what was going on, slack-jawed that someone was actually helping customers. Imagine 5 stunned Napoleon Dynamites watching me pretending to be an employee. After helping my 5th or 6th customer, I was starting to gather a line of customers looking for help. A manager finally walked over. I would guess confused why someone was helping customers and asked me what I thought I was doing. I told him, "I'm helping your customers." He was frowning now and told me sternly, "You can't do that. You don't work here." I told him, "Apparently none of your associates work here either." I saw the hiding employee quickly look down the aisle with a mix of shame and fear on his face before he went slinking off to safety. Now the manager was really frowning, so I asked him about my commissions on all the sales I had made. I told him I was flexible if he wanted to just give me in-store credits. He asked me if I had what I needed so I could check out. I told him I can't find parts or your employees, so I'll just go. I thought it was a good idea to beat it before I got banned from the store. Here's hoping that there was some serious reaming out done when you were out of the door. That is slacking taken to the next level. The manager must be blind if he has not noticed his employees avoiding customers before. Our next post is by Shanail18, titled, "Angry Man Yells at Me While I'm on the Phone." I work at an urgent care clinic as a medical assistant. There's a Walmart super close to where I work, so I often go after getting off shift. So I had gone one day after work in my grey scrubs. I had a cart and was on the phone with one of my friends. As I was standing in line to check out, I hear a male voice next to me say, "Where are the items located?" I didn't answer due to the fact that I obviously do not work there and was on the phone. This man then grabs my arm and yells, "I asked you where the hell our items are," which I then proceeded to pull out my arm away and yell back at him, "What the hell? I don't work here." He looked as if I had slapped him and turned and walked away. For reference, I'm a 5'2" female and this was a middle-aged heavy-set male. I'm amazed at how many of these stories involve people grabbing random strangers. Seems like stores need to start filing assault claims on behalf of employees. When I worked in a grocery store, it was always middle-aged or older folks doing it. Mostly men, but women did it occasionally as well. Once when I was stocking shelves, I had my earbuds in, the store was supposed to be closed and locked, and this older man grabbed my shoulders and screamed at me about my earphones. Luckily, my manager kicked the guy out since we were closed, but I have a million stories of people who think it's okay to touch and even harass employees at that store. Our next post is by user Good Non-Evil Harry, titled, "It finally happened to me." So I was in one of those dollar stores where the HEB grocery store was too hard to get into with COVID precautions and such. I had an HEB grocery bag in my hand. I was looking at the selection of mac and cheese and wishing I wasn't. These 2 women came around the corner, and without hesitation, they started asking me where crap was. I looked behind me to see if they were talking to someone behind me. They were not. I squinched up my face. I had a mask on though, and said, "I don't work here, lady." One of them said like, "Well, you got the bag and stuff." My bag was from a popular grocery store? For the life of me, I cannot comprehend why those women thought I worked there. And no hesitation either. It was automatic. They never even stopped to wonder if I worked there or not. Mistaken for a caterer at my own wedding. So, my wedding party was very informal. We wore sports jerseys. A lot of family and friends of family came, including a batch of people I didn't even know. which got a little weird because we still only personally invited everyone and told everyone to let us know if they have a +1 and it would be fine for us to invite them. This is so we could track catering expenses and space concerns. It was a rough day, and I was very limited in support and was taking care of most of setup and issues myself in a party of roughly 80 people. It felt more like work than a party. The time finally came where I could rest when issues were being taken care of, about halfway through the party. The sun was beginning to set. I sat down in the corner and wiped the sweat off of my face and looked over at the food. Everyone had eaten except me, so I was ready to finally dive into the food that I paid for. Some woman I never met in her late 20s asked me to bring a plate for her kids. Said, "I'm sorry ma'am, but I want to bring some stuff for my wife and start eating myself." "Oh, caterers can bring their families to events like this?" Me, somewhat confused at her response, says, "The caterers here are a family business." So, sort of? Isn't it inappropriate for you to eat food someone else paid for? Me, confused, even further, but giving a chuckle, is like, no, I paid for it. I'm sorry, who did you come here with? Oh, really? You must be the party planner. Are you a friend of the groom's? I was invited by the groom. I'm F. Me, chuckling again, no, I'm the groom. Oh, I'm sorry, how embarrassing. You're the groom? Hey, nice to meet you. I sent invitations by name, but we also requested feedback for the plus invitations. I don't believe I sent you an invitation. I think everyone invited more people than we initially wanted. Am I and my kids okay to be here? I'm actually sister's friend's friend. They said it was okay. Oh, yes, that will be perfectly fine. We have much more food than I thought. It won't be an issue though. Nice to meet you. So I came to the table with my wife and her grandmother, and we finally ate. My wife to me says, "Damn girl, you flirting with all the ladies at our wedding party or what?" I know that a +1 of a +1 that was uninvited is generally uncool, but there was no need to stress it. Everyone had a good time, and there was actually too much food. Rightio, and our next post is by Flex2019, titled, "Not taking trash is sexual assault?" So, first time Reddit poster here. I don't know if this counts, but oh well. Buckle down for a long explanation. Some background. I'm a plumber and I'm only 18. I went to a trade school for high school and came out with a full-time job as an apprentice. This happened about 5 months ago and has me screwed up ever since. I was working in a 4-story building inside the city and there's only one elevator, which we weren't allowed to use because of the companies that worked in the building itself, and then only one spiral square staircase, needed for later. My journeyman and I were wrapping up our day and packing up everything. As the younger guy, I was sweeping and taking the loads back down to the truck to get ready to leave, and on one of my last trips, I was only taking a trash bag and a few of the other hand tools I hadn't grabbed yet. I'm in my normal work clothes, but my boss isn't strict about wearing company clothing, so I'm only wearing my dicky pants and a beat-up sweatshirt with no labels. I start walking down the stairs with the trash from the 4th floor to the bottom when a worker, networking/calling helpline company, from the 3rd floor walked out with a trash bag. I briefly walked past, just finishing my day when she scoffed at me. Me being the kid I am, turn around and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. I didn't mean to bump into you," and continued down, and then she said, "Here, take this crap. I got a call I need to get on." I said that I was sorry and I didn't work for the building, and it's not my job to take it. So she then exclaims, "You're dressed as a janitor. My son is one too. You dress just like him. He has the same tools on him all day." I tried to tell her that I didn't and that I'm a plumber working above her on the 4th floor. In retrospect, yes, I could have taken it, but there wasn't one of those giant trash bag bins to put trash in, so we had to take it back to the shop to dispose of, and we didn't have much room for more in the van. I started to get annoyed, but I just remembered that I needed to take breaths and walk away. I start going down the stairs when she grabbed the back of my hoodie and yanked it. I spun around like, what the hell? And she slammed the bag into my stomach, sending me stumbling down the stairs. This was when one of her co-workers comes out because of the commotion, and she starts fake crying and saying I sexually harassed her, and that she shoved me down the stairs in an attempt to save herself. I tried to say something getting up, but the guy was on the phone with the cops already and he took her away to calm her down. I started to get so mad at the woman, but my coworker came to me and said everything would be fine. This is when the biggest blessing ever occurred. My buddy loves to mess with me. He'd take videos of me working or being oblivious, and he'd throw like coins at me to be funny or dump water on me just as a joke to lighten the day up a bit. Well, he recorded the interaction and the lady never knew that he was there. Reason why spiral staircase was important. By the time he made sure I was alright, the cops were there about 10 minutes after the whole thing went down. They talk to the woman and they take her side of things at first. They start questioning me in the stairwell, and my buddy said he witnessed it and had a video. He began to show the video to the cop of literally everything. From the moment I began down the stairs and past this lady, to her shoving me down the stairs. He talks to her, and from the second he said there was a video, she turned ghost white. They took her downstairs to the cruiser, and the cop came back to me asking if I needed assistance or ambulance, as I had a gash on my elbow when I stumbled down, but I was totally fine though, just in complete shock. He also asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said I would. In the following time since this happened, I've taken her to court, and she's been charged and is serving time for assault and battery and another thing I don't recall. What's important to know, as I'm realizing now that there was no cameras in the stairwell, I would have been screwed. Absolutely screwed. It was a huge reality check for myself. I could be sitting in jail serving time for something I didn't do at this very moment. It could have ruined my life, to be quite honest. Luckily my buddy was there, and ever since then I have never complained once about him messing around with me. Shortly after this, the building installed new cameras everywhere. Being 5 months later, my parents have been awesome and teaching me about all of this stuff, especially since I'm a man and it can get scary with accusations like that. They believed me, and I've always been raised by them to treat women right, and I'm the kid who wouldn't hurt a fly. Disclaimer, I typed this on my phone and I sucked in English all my life, so I know the grammar is probably terrible. Alright, and our next post is by user MizerLou95, titled, Lady Breaks Social Distancing Because She Assumes I Work There. So I, male, just about 17, was at Giant Eagle with my dad just now. In my state, masks are required in public, as is a minimum of 6 foot distance. And yes, I followed all rules. My father was ringing up our groceries and I was bagging them. So there wasn't enough distance between us that I guess, to this Karen, it looked like I worked there. But it should be noted that I was wearing a Jaws shirt and literal swim trunks. Nothing even close to resembling a uniform. So I'm bagging up the goods, and I hear someone say something behind me. But the voice is way too close. I turn around and there she is, a middle-aged Karen, a mere 1 foot away from me, if that. But she's wearing a mask, looking right into my eyes. I freeze for a second, because, being autistic and having social anxiety, eye contact is a big no for me. So I quickly look away. I'm confused, so I say, "What?" Not with attitude or anything, just pure confusion. Karen huffs and rolls her eyes and snaps, "Oh my god, I said where is insert product here." It hits me that she thinks I work there. Now, like I said, I'm in fight or flight mode, so I can't really formulate a response. I happened to watch Impractical Jokers, the movie, last night, so the first thing that comes to my mind is, up your ass and to the left. So I say it, not with attitude, I just sort of simply state it. Karen gasps, saying something along the lines of, "How dare you?" and storms away. Luckily my dad got a good laugh out of it and isn't mad at all, as the lady did act very out of line. Side note, I definitely recommend the Impractical Jokers movie. Funny stuff. Rightio boys and girls, our next post is by Not Your Teddy Bear, titled, Ex-boss called me to yell at me for not showing up at work. I'm new to Reddit and I'm a bit tipsy, so be easy on me. I thought this story would be a good fit here. Some backstory and general info. I'm a female with a somewhat unique name. Yes, this is important. I was 18, I'm 23 now, when I got my first job at a Western wear store, and didn't even work there for a full year. We sold mainly cowboy boots, and some clothes and accessories that went along with that general theme. I loved working there and it was a pretty great first job. There were 2 locations, one in my town and one in the next state. I stayed at one location in my town, and my boss mostly stayed at the other location because she lived closer to it. She also had an employee who would go in between stores as the boss needed it. At first, I thought my boss was a really badass woman. However, that opinion would soon change. You see, she sucked at running a business, and didn't want to keep paying the expensive rent for the building we were currently using, so she moved the store to an obscure location at the beginning of the summer. She admitted that summers were the slowest season, so in my opinion, it was not smart to move locations then. She would also avoid regular customers when they would come in to talk to her about their orders taking too long to arrive. I also heard she was a homewrecker, and the guy whose marriage she ruined would come into the store regularly. Needless to say, she was a bad businesswoman who did whatever she wanted. After she moved the store, we started losing business. She started scheduling less of us, having maybe 2 employees working at once. Then she told me, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if you looked for another job. I remember that word for word. Looking back, I realized that was her way of saying, you should probably find another job. Soon we weren't getting scheduled at all. She was running the store by herself and she kept saying, maybe business will pick up next week and I'll need you. Then one day, Mum came home and asked if my boss had moved again. I said I didn't know, then I asked why. She informed me that she drove by my work and it looked empty. I told my friend, and soon she drove by and told me that it was indeed completely deserted. I officially didn't have a job anymore. Thankfully, I was working in a barn a few days a week, so I had some kind of income. I did find out that this woman still had her other store open, so I was a little salty. Now the real story. I was chilling at home a few months after I found out my boss had deserted us when I see that she's calling me. I thought it was weird and answered. The call started off very friendly and cheerful, but then her bitchy side came out. The call went something like this. I'm like, hello? Hi, OP? Yes? Hi, this is ex-boss. How are you? I'm alright, how are you? I'm good. Look, I'm calling because, cue bitchiness, you cannot keep calling out of work like this? I'm completely confused and I'm like, excuse me? What? You keep calling out when you should be here working. I have places I need to be, and ex-coworker cannot run the store alone. I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, you don't know what I'm talking about? No ma'am, I haven't worked with you in months. There is silence for a few seconds, and then she hangs up. I sat there for a minute processing what just happened. I figure she must have a worker at the other store with the same name as me, and she just called the wrong one, but I have a very uncommon name, so that is unlikely in my opinion. And if it was a mistake, why not just own up to it, suck it up and fudging apologize? But instead, like a scared little middle schooler, she hangs up. It was in this moment I lost what little respect I had left for her. I wish there was a better ending, but there isn't. I never heard from her again. I have looked her up and her other store, and turns out she eventually closed that store too, and now she works at an airport. That somewhat makes me happy. Part of me wants to open a store like hers and run it better than she did, but we'll see. And our next post is by Vatican Cameos 714, titled, Entitled Shopper Wants Me to Help Her Insult My Wife. My wife, 27 female, and I, 28 female, were at Wally World a couple years ago for a new garden hose reel. We were talking over the different options, not 3 inches from each other, when this lady actually pushes me out of the way to speak to my wife. My wife was wearing jeans and a hoodie, so there was no way she looked like an employee. ES is like, excuse me, where's the dog shampoo? My wife, just trying to be helpful, says, I would look in the pet sections. ES rolls her eyes. I already did, and I didn't see the brand I want. My wife's like, oh, that sucks, and gives her a sympathetic look. Assuming the conversation was over, my wife turns back to the shelf. I had gotten irritated when the woman pushed me aside, but had assumed she was just a rude person trying to get the items on the shelf. I moved to step around her, but she tapped my wife rather forcefully on the shoulder. Now, I know I have an anger issue, so unless my wife signals for help, I try to let her handle things, or else run the risk of causing a scene. So I watched quietly, waiting. Excuse me, you have to help me. My wife's like, I'm sorry ma'am, I don't know where your item is. Maybe you should ask someone if they carry that brand here. Isn't it your job to know these things? Turns to me and gestures at my wife. What an idiot. Me, comprehending the trouble before my wife, says, she doesn't work here. The entitled shopper looked at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. For a moment, she kept glancing between me and my wife before recognition settled in. Oh, turns back to my wife. Oh, the way you were helping your friend, I just assumed you worked here. My wife smiled nervously, but I was still kind of pissy that the woman had pushed me away. My wife and I are trying to decide what to buy. Squeezes my body between her and my wife. Excuse us? The woman continued to stare at us. I didn't look at her directly, but I could feel the hole that she was burning into the side of my skull start to smoke. Before she walked away, we heard her say, "Well, that's just not right." My wife and I sighed and went back to comparing hose reels. Some people. Radio Gamers, our next post is by Mary Rose Tudor, titled, "No ma'am, this is not the dentist's office." So a bit of background. In my neighborhood, there is a dentist office not too far from my house. Very rarely people would somehow mistake my house for the dentist office, even though they have a sign that clearly says dentist office. If anyone wants to read this on YouTube, be my guest. Thanks, Mary Rose Tudor. This happened in 2019. I was home from work, doing some homework, and watching a documentary for my history class, Britain's Bloodiest Dynasty, if anyone is curious. It's a very chill afternoon. I had supper on the cook, doing homework and some coffee. Both of my dogs are asleep in their little beds. Then, all of a sudden, I hear a knock at the door. The dogs jump up and start barking like mad. I thought it was my parents stopping by, but then I realized my dogs don't bark like the house is on fire when my parents come to visit. I set my things down, check on dinner to make sure it's not burning. I go to the back door, and it's a lady that I don't know. I open my door, leaving the screen door closed, and greet her. And let's just call this lady Karen. A classic, I know. I say, "Can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Dr. Brown." Like the doctor from ER, and not his real name. Me, realizing she is talking about the dentist down the road. "Oh, that's down the road. If you just back out and go down just a little further, you turn on Rose Street," again not the name, "and you'll see Dr. Brown's office." Karen just had the baffled, like Karen.ex stopped functioning. She looked at me, and then an ear-splitting screaming came from my TV of some poor English lord being tortured because he ticked off some king. Like I said, watching a documentary on the Plantagenet dynasty. Karen jumped back at the sound and looked at me like I had spit in her bean curd. "What is that? You can't watch it in a dentist's office." Me, dead-faced. "Good thing this isn't a dentist office. Please have a nice day." And I close the door in Karen's face. I look through the peephole and it looks like she huffs and leaves. I never saw or heard from Karen again. Thank God. And now our next post is by Billy's, titled, "I don't know lady, but I'll look." Now, this one's very short. It was my fault because, without thinking about it, I went shopping with my wife and was dressed in a red polo shirt and khaki pants. And we were shopping at a depot-style home store. I was looking for a lawn sprinkler and was standing in the garden section studying the display. In the next bay, there were concrete stands for garden decorations. Someone touched my arm, and a lady a little older than I asked, "Do you have decorative bowls?" I thought about it and said, "Well, I've never had any complaints." And she scuttled away. I do hope she found her decorative glass garden bowls though. And our next post is by Marble Chocolate, titled, "Random Girl Jumped in My Car." I really don't know how much context this needs, but I'll try to keep this short and sharp. I was living in London at the time and had just driven home after work and pulled up outside my flat on a terraced house street. To my surprise, the front passenger door opens and this blonde girl jumps in. She's like, "Hi." I'm like, this is not an Uber." She looks towards me and the color drains from her face. "Oh crap." Promptly jumps out and ducks back into her flat without looking back, 2 doors down from mine. I parked the car, went inside, cacking myself, and it dawned on me, you don't get in the front seat of an Uber. So I looked out the window and sure enough, 5 minutes later, a black hatchback pulls up. Sits there a while, BG gets in the front seat, the car sits there a while, BG gets out, black hatchback drives off. 2 doors down, party ensues. Either she got in the wrong car again, or... Nah, most probably the latter, isn't it? Oh, good party. Righto guys, our next one's by Baseman L, titled, Need a Taxi? Not me, Gov. This is a sort of I don't work here story, but no lady. I'm a musician, I play and function in cover bands, doing weddings, parties, and so on in bars, hotels, pretty much anywhere where people ask us. Really, as long as they pay us and we consider we're likely to survive the experience. As I'm out working late at night and usually in licensed premises, I encounter a number of drunk, stupid, entitled people along the way. It's par for the course and they're usually not too much of a problem, but there are always exceptions. One evening some years ago, I was playing in a function room in North London. There were 2 bands booked that night, plus a DJ. Ours was a late finish. We were the final band on and our set began at midnight and ended at 3 in the morning. We played there quite regularly, so knew the score. The gig itself went fine and everyone enjoyed themselves. We finished our set and packed up our gear, while the staff began to shoo the customers out and clear up the venue in preparation for closing. As it was in the middle of the night, there were few, if any, buses or public transport running. Those who had not arrived in their cars had to find a taxi to take them home. There was always a queue of taxis outside the front doors, plus a scrum of people trying to get into them, as there was never enough cars to go around. There was no queue. It was every man and woman for himself. The door staff did their best to try to keep order, but it was a bit of a melee. By the time we had packed away, and were ready to load our kit into our vehicles, most customers had left, leaving the stragglers who had not managed to find a taxi. I left my equipment by the door just inside the venue and went to fetch my car from the car park across the street. As I played the bass, I had 2 large speaker cabinets. This was before the days of compact, lightweight bass amplification. 2 flight cases containing my instrument and amplifier, another case full of cables and accessories, plus a couple of lights and part of the PA system. I drove a Volvo Estate, about the only vehicle that would accommodate the amount of stuff I had to transport. I parked outside the front door and went in to collect my stuff. I wheeled the first part of my speaker cabs out to find 3 people sitting in my car. I opened the tailgate, lifted the speaker into the vehicle, and asked what they're doing. "You're a taxi," came the reply. "Take us to Harlesden." Sorry," I replied. "I'm part of the band. I need to load my equipment. Would you get out of the car, please?" "Don't give us that. You're a taxi. Now take us to..." I walked around the passenger door, looked in and said, "Listen, mate, look at my face. Ring any bells? You've been looking at me up on the stage for the last 3 hours. I'm in the band. Now get out of my car, please. Don't feckin' lie ya. You're a..." Realizing that he was going nowhere, I went to the rear of the car and retrieved the pickaxe handle that I kept there for emergencies. I went to the passenger door, opened it, and told my new friends to get out, and waved my little friend at them. "For the last time, I'm not a bloody taxi. Now get out or you'll get this." This had the desired effect. They got out, grumbling, and went back to the front door to wait for a taxi. I continued to load the car, bid goodnight to the door staff, got in and started the engine. As I did, one of the 3 ran to the car. I quickly engaged the central locking. He pulled on the handle. When it wouldn't open, he wrapped his arm over the roof and around the windscreen on the passenger side, shouting, "Take us to Harlesden, you car!" His friends headed towards the car, so I engaged first gear and eased forward. They stopped, but our hero clung on, kicking at the door and yelling. I increased my speed and swerved from side to side in an effort to dislodge him. He clung on, still yelling. He held on until I got onto the end of the street, but I managed to throw him off by taking a sharp bend at the end of the road at speed. He fell in a heap in the road and lay there. I didn't bother to find out if he was alright. The Lord watches over drunks and little children. Lady runs over my foot because I wouldn't fetch motor oil for her. Our cast are me, angry lady, confused worker, and my hero. So, let me start by saying I get mistaken for working at Walmart a lot because of a lanyard that I wear. I keep my keys on a lanyard and I usually wear it around my neck because it's easy to grab it and go when I need to get my car going again. And I guess because it's blue, a lot of people think it's for an employee tag. Usually it's someone older just asking where something is, or if I can get something down from the shelf for them, and usually I'll point them in the right direction. That, or someone realizes the mistake and apologizes. It's fun to hear from a manager at Walmart that I was a very helpful young lady because I helped get a set of dishes off of the third shelf for the lady with back pains. Lol. This woman was much different. I had just gotten off work. So I was wearing a black shirt with my company logo on it and a pair of black jeans and black shoes. I had my purse sitting on my lap and my lanyard around my neck. I was waiting to pick up a pile of Christmas gifts and was exhausted from work. So I was pretty much dozing in this chair they had in their pickup area. This is usually where I get spotted. That was when I heard it. "Wake up, lazy girl!" This sharp, angry voice. And I opened my eyes to see a woman who, if I hadn't heard her speak, would have thought she was a sweet old grandma. She had on this white and green striped shirt, a pair of jeans, and lots of necklaces, with her grey hair pulled back in a ponytail with cute little bangs. And she had 3 of those cheap little necklaces that you find at kids' birthday parties around her neck. What? I'm about half awake. "You need to help me now. Get off your lazy butt and help me." "What are you talking about?" She paid my question no mind. "Go and get me motor oil." "What? No. Go get it yourself." She's furious. "My son said that our car needs oil and I'm not going all the way across the store for it. Do your job and go get it." The auto center was pretty far away, but the motor carts from what I've seen are pretty fast, and it's not like she had to walk. 1, I don't work here. Don't have to listen to you. 2, the employees here are not dogs. They won't go fetch for you. "You don't get to talk to me like that. Go and get my oil. Then I want to speak to your manager." "I don't work here." I remembered my lanyard and took it off to show her that it only had my keys, and that it had a local college's name on it, since I got it at a job fair at school. "This isn't from this store." And yet she refuses to look at my lanyard and says, "No, that is bullcrap. Do as you're told or I will drag you to your manager myself." She grabbed my arm and tried to roll along with me, but I didn't want to deal with this. So I ran. I pulled my arm away and with what little energy I had from my mini nap, took off running. She tried to follow me, but I was able to weave my way through a few of the clothes racks and hid from her as she shouted at me. I roamed the store a bit, looking for junk I probably didn't need but could use, mostly just avoiding her. Even made my way to the auto center and picked up a tire pressure gauge, since mine had broken lol. I found myself in the craft aisle and had at this point stuck my earbuds in, because there was a screaming kid in the area. I'm the oldest of 6 and I work in a restaurant as well as babysat. You can only take so much angry child. This also meant that I couldn't hear anything. So I'm staring at some paints when I see her out of the corner of my eye. At least her cart. She's really close to me, and before I can step away, she ran over my freaking foot. I don't know if any of you have ever had your foot run over by a motor cart, but it freaking hurts. It's not a very heavy piece of machinery apparently, about 25 pounds according to Google, but it hurts when that weight is on your bony as hell foot, especially with the 120 pounds this woman was adding to it, and the fact I wasn't ready for this. So I screamed. I was in shock, and it felt like she had shattered my foot, especially when her back wheels went over it, again, and I screamed again. I had to sit down on one of the shelves and rip my shoe off, trying to alleviate some of the pain while the old lady was yelling at me. She's like, "That'll teach you to disrespect a customer, you little tramp. Now go get my motor oil." For the last bloody time, I don't work here, and you'll be lucky if I don't press charges on you. Finally, an actual employee, CW, came jogging around the corner, wearing a vest that had a logo on the corner and his name tag clipped onto his chest. He looked entirely confused, which made sense. There was a crying 19-year-old taking off her shoe while a woman sat in a motorcart screaming at her. They say, "Are you okay, ma'am?" He came over to me first, seeing as I pulled off my sock. My foot was swelling, and there was a little blood because my toenail had dug into my foot and cut it. "I need your manager. She should be fired." CW looked at me confused. Me trying to catch my breath when I start crying. I have the worst time stopping. She ran. AL starts shouting again. "She wouldn't get my motor oil. Get me your manager." The worker looked like he didn't know what to do. He had one person sobbing and sounding like she was choking. I do a weird gasping thing when I'm trying to catch my breath. It's hard to explain. While another was screaming at him. That was when she came. My hero. The mother of the screaming child from before, who had apparently been screaming because he fell down. Don't believe that for a second, mostly since I heard "I want it," but I digress. She looked angry at me. "What the hell is the matter with you?" She was pointing at AL. "Why the hell would you run over some random girl's foot?" The old lady is ticked off now and she says, "She's an employee. She needs to learn not to ignore customers." She doesn't even have a name tag, you idiot. She's wearing a uniform for another company. What the hell made you think she worked there? She is wearing a name tag, look. She reached over and yanked my lanyard off of my neck, holding out to MH, like she won or something. "See?" MH snatching my lanyard and showing it to her. "Does that say Walmart to you?" The lady finally got a good look and realized that they were only keys and the letters on the lanyard had the initials of the college on it, and she turned white. My hero then turned to the worker and said, "Get your manager and a first aid kit, now." She sounded furious. The worker ran off, looking a little relieved to finally have a direction to run into, and my hero began to do the mum thing, where she examined my foot and talked to me in a nicer voice. The lady tried to scoot her way out of the store, but was blocked by the greeter. She was trying to take the motor cart, which is a big no-no. The manager came and asked if I wanted to get the police involved, or if I wanted an ambulance. I said no, I just wanted to get my things, an ice pack, and go. They let me sit in that comfy chair in the pickup waiting area, and gave me a 50% discount on my pickup stuff, letting me take the stuff I had picked up when walking around for free. I waited until the swelling in my foot had gone down, and watched the crap storm as AL tried to convince the manager that I was his inordinate employee, and that I needed to be fired. He instead banned her from the store, and told her if she came near his employees, she'd get the police called on her. My hero got her husband to take their kid home, and come back for her, and sat with me to make sure I was okay and could get home. It wasn't my driving foot, so I could drive okay, and I was able to limp my way to my car. My foot was a fun shade of black, purple, and a little blue for a little while, but my mum and stepdad, both in the medical field, don't think it's broken. It's been sore, but I probably won't end up taking it to a doctor. Best Christmas gift I ever got though, was watching the angry lady get her motorcart turned off and watch her go off, jumping around and stomping. Edit. People keep telling me I should have pressed charges. I get it. I probably should have, but I didn't need the stress of that on top of a lot of other problems I was and currently am still dealing with. She got banned, she can get arrested by someone. Let it go. Also, as for going to the doctors, I have the mentality that if it's pain that simply doesn't go away, and have my paramedic parents' opinion to it, then I go. But just because I've been dealing with soreness means nothing. I work on my feet constantly, and probably need to give it time to rest and heal. That's it. Nothing is broken. And our next post is by the same OP. Guys, I saw her again, and this time a door came down. So, I posted a story ages and ages ago about how a woman ran over my foot at Walmart with a motorized cart. After this happened, she was banned from our local Walmarts, and from a few in the area which I forgot to mention. I got fed up with the comments. First of all, gonna update on my injured foot. I was just fine. Lots and lots of bruising and the occasional pain, but I did take a little break and stayed off of it. I'm all healed now. Second, guess who managed to show her face again? Crazy lady. And I guess she figured out the easy trick of changing her appearance a bit and came with someone else and went back in no issues. My Walmart is usually good about this kind of stuff, but I guess not this time. Third, this was not very recent. This was around when the virus was starting to become apparent and before all the stores were shutting down and people were self-isolating. And of course, I just so happened to be there again, with my blue lanyard and a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. I was shopping around, picking up a few unnecessary objects. I saw her staring at me at one point and waved, earning no reaction other than a scoff. I knew she looked familiar, but I couldn't place her face. I work 3 jobs and I see about a bazillion different faces a day, and have trouble remembering unless I see that person more than a few times. What I didn't notice for a while, because I'm an unobservant freak, was that she was following me. For how long I don't know, but I noticed I was seeing her everywhere. The auto center, office supplies, dairy, baking supplies, even toys. I didn't know what she wanted from me. She had another woman with her too. Dark-haired, bob-cut, dark makeup, and a low-cut t-shirt, with tight jeans and heels. She just had this dark scowl on her face as they followed me. I didn't recognize her either, until I heard Crazy Lady's voice. That horribly shrill voice that haunted my nightmares when my foot hurt, and sent chills down my spine and dogs running. We were in the craft aisle, where I was looking for a specific type of paint. I noticed them again, and I guess I looked a little too long. Crazy Lady turned to who I will call the entitled lady, and grabbed a paintable sign at random. Crazy Lady says, "Look at this, entitled lady, doesn't this look just perfect?" That made my brain do a 360. Dear gods, why was she here? She wasn't supposed to be here. Oh mum, it's great. She turned to me, "Isn't this just wonderful?" I gave a quick nod, grabbing the next best thing to what I needed. I needed matte fabric paint if you're curious. I grabbed slick instead, and started to leave. They kept following me, and I grabbed a pair of jeans and hid in a change room. It felt like an eternity waiting for the door to be unlocked, but luckily, Crazy Lady's scooter got stuck. I sat on the bench and waited to see if I'd lost them, but suddenly, bang, bang, bang. I couldn't help but scream as the flimsy door to the changing room nearly fell off its hinge. "Get out of here. We know who you are. You owe my mother for what you did." Bang, bang, bang. I just sat in the corner and watched in horror as the door fell to the ground. I had to put my hands up to catch it and push it away, otherwise it would have landed on my head. She looks at the ripped apart wall from where the hinges had been ripped off, and she shrugged, before climbing over and getting in my face. "You will be coming with me. You owe my mother compensation for getting her banned." Me, shrinking into the corner, "No I won't. Leave me alone. Your mother shouldn't be here if she's banned." I probably shouldn't have said that, because it more than likely prompted what happened next, but I've never been one to say the right thing. Entitled Lady grabbed me by my hair and pulled me out of the changing room, pulling me over to Crazy Lady, who was sitting there looking smug. Entitled Lady literally threw me on the ground by pushing on my head and letting me go. "Apologize, now." I sat there shaking, and both women started shouting again, screaming that I owed them. Thankfully, this didn't last too long, as the associate who was posted at the changing room, they never stuck around long once someone was in the change room or if no one was around, and another worker came over, separating the 3 of us. While the associate was helping me off the floor, Crazy Lady actually got up off her motorized scooter and tried to lunge at me. I held my hand out so that it caught her and pushed her back. She started screaming about how I assaulted her, and one of the associates pretty much told her to shut up and wait for the police. Well, they showed up, and since there were a few security cameras nearby, of all the things, this Walmart is concerned with things being stolen via changing room tricks. And a few witnesses, including the poor lady in the room next to me, who was so scared that someone was coming for her next. Apparently, when the door fell, the corner of the door cracked the wall to her room. And due to what happened last time, and even despite how I usually react to these kinds of things, I pressed charges. Both women went away for multiple things: assault, destruction of property, trespassing, etc, 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 etc. Hopefully, I won't have this kind of thing happen again. Having to re-meet the entitled people in my life might be worse than meeting more. Our next post is by user Memory9, titled, "Served a guy in the bar that I don't work for, got 2 free pints." So, I worked in the bar/restaurant business for nearly 20 years and enjoy a good story about customers and such. After reading many stories in here, I decided to post mine. About 12 years ago, I was working in one of Dublin's pubs, which had a black uniform policy, like every other place. One day, when my shift was nearly over, my mate popped in and asked me if I wanted to have a pint. Usually I don't like to drink in the place I work in, so we decided to do a bar/nightclub nearby. This was about 9 PM in the evening and the nightclub hasn't kicked off yet, so there was no trouble getting into the bar, plus I knew the bouncer pretty well. We went in, sat at the bar counter and had our first pint of Guinness, which is a blessing after a hard day at work. Just as we nearly finished and ordered more, my mate spotted one of our friends at the table further away and suggested we move to join them. That was a good idea, and we decided to get pints for them as well to give them a surprise and save time coming back. We got 6 pints altogether and just about to carry them to the table, when my mate got an urge to go to the toilet. I said it's fine, I'll bring them over. So I grabbed 3 pints and went to the friend's table, brought the first 3 and went back to the bar counter to get the rest. Halfway to the bar, this middle-aged gent taps me on my hand and says, "Sorry pal, when you're ready?" It's the phrase used in Dublin to get anyone's attention. I turned around and said, "Give me a second please, I need to bring pints to my mates." I grab the rest of them and go to the table, and again this gent taps me on the back and goes, "When you're ready pal." I thought he might know me or something, so I decided to come back and see what he wants. Came back and asked him if everything is okay, on which he replied, "We'll have 3 Guinness, gin and tonic and a Bacardi Diet Coke," and handed me a €50 note. That's when I understood what's going on. He thought I worked in this bar and gave me the order. I'm a kind person and loved a good laugh, so I decided to play along, took the money and went to the bar. Got the drinks and asked to give me a tray as well to serve them at once. When I brought the drinks to his table, gave him change, he tried to give me a €5 tip. To which I said, "It's alright dude, I don't need it." He replied, "Never seen a waiter that doesn't want a tip." And I said, "Oh, I don't work here bro, better give that tip to the actual staff," and walked away to my table. Told my friends about what happened and they had a massive laugh. Later on, got 2 pints of Guinness brought to me by the same gent I served, with apologies and all. We laughed, made new friends and had a great night. Our next post is by user Waitress, titled, "Sitting at computer store actually was a good advertising." Now for a bit of context. Since a few years, I've been learning about building PCs and built some. I also like to help newbies to gaming choosing components and building their first machines. Sometimes they pay me some or give me a bar of chocolate or something. I was still underage at the time and this day I was a ceremony master in an academy at my school, so I was in suit with a tie. After it ended, I was waiting for my friend to end his classes, so I went to some computer store, which dress code was also suit but without ties. So I was walking around mostly thinking, I saw that CPU $10 cheaper on the internet. And came to pre-builds, which are really not the best there, like putting good CPU and motherboard that doesn't allow you to modify the computer in any way, so you would most likely spend much more money on upgrades and etc. After some time, a lady came in with a 14-year-old kid and began looking on those pre-builds. As soon as I saw it, I wanted to help them because they could get much better PCs at the same price, but I'm kind of an introvert, which most of the time, I am unable to start a conversation with strangers. So I just moved to the next one, but after some time, they approached me. They say, "Excuse me, could you help us choosing a good computer for my son?" Of course, what would it be used for? As I said, they have to break this stranger barrier. I can speak normally now, it's kinda strange. Well, learning of course. I saw them looking at computers about $1,000 to $1,500, so certainly not the case. Mostly kid talked her into more expensive ones. I'm like, would you like to play any games too? If yes, then which ones? Yes, I like XXX and XXX. I saw that PC, pointed at some, has some good components for it. Not all, I suggest you ask someone who works here about more specific parameters. They showed, for example, only i7 CPU. Not exact model, typical in my country. So you don't work here? Her cheeks turned kinda pink. Probably she got a little embarrassed. No, I don't. However, if you would like, I can build a much better computer at a much better price than those ones. Here is my number. In the end, I built him a much better computer than what the shop offered and earned $20, which I didn't ask for, so happy ending, even though the story might not be as interesting. Our next post is by Clammy Hydra, titled, Older Lady Thought I Was Bringing Her a Shopping Cart to Use in the Grocery Store. Yesterday, I was running the gauntlet at a local grocery store. I picked up a disinfectant wipe at the door and went to the cart station and wiped down the cart that I was going to use. I was finally satisfied, so I started pushing it back to the door to throw away the used wipe, just as an old lady comes through the door. She smiles really big and says, "Oh, thank you," and moves to take the cart. I said, "You're welcome." Then I grabbed another wipe and went to get another cart. I'm glad she got a cart I was sure wouldn't give her the virus. Now that's wholesome. And our last post today is by user Is That My Waffle? Titled, A Wild Karen Meets Her Match. For background, I'm a police officer in Australia, mostly known as copper. I work in plain clothes. At work, I wear a business shirt with tie, suit pants, and have my utility belt with a gun, taser, pepper spray, and all other necessary accoutrements on the belt. I also have a police badge with my work ID around my neck. This incident also happened while coronavirus was spreading rapidly. Most business has been closed by the government mandate. People have to ensure that they are practicing social distancing or they can be fined. The government hasn't mandated that people stay home, but have limited the number of people allowed in groups, no contact with strangers, and you should only go out for work or essential supplies. It's also important to know that in Australia, members of the public cannot carry firearms in public, and it's difficult to get a license to even possess a firearm. A few days ago, I was at work, and my partner needed to buy supplies from an office supply store nearby. The staff at this store wear far blue polo shirts. We went to the store, and my partner was getting everything she needed. I was waiting when I hear this screeching voice from behind me. "Where are the charges?" I turn around and see this Karen standing there with her arms crossed, glaring at me. Now let me remind you that I'm wearing all my work gear, and a bright pink long-sleeve business shirt. I say to the Karen, "I'm not sure where the..." Karen is not impressed and cuts me off, steps very close to me, well within what I would consider my personal space at the best of times, but when I'm at work, it's an offensive gesture. Karen then screeches, "You work here. How the hell do you not know where the charges are?" I look the Karen dead in the eye and say with a stern voice, First thing, I don't work here. Second thing, I'm a police officer. I point at my gun, taser, and badge. Third thing, you are currently breaching social distancing laws and can be fined. Step back now." The Karen quickly turned around and ran from the store. I'm just happy that actual staff didn't have to deal with her because she was rude from the start. I should have pointed out that a phone charger isn't an essential purchase. Edit. Our government deems essential items as food and medicine. You can also go outside to exercise or travel to work. I'm a 32-year-old, and for me personally, a phone charger is essential. I live off my phone. But is anything a Karen wants really essential? It's a good question there, buddy. I don't have the answer for that one. Karen thinks kicking the boss's kid out is a favor. First post. Story has been translated from our language, so the whole conversation might not be word for word. Okay, so, my parents used to own a small cafe in a small shopping mall. I was 13 at the time, I'm 15 now, so it was not that long ago. This event was around a week before we closed down, but I still remembered it. My parents used to come there once a week to check in and brought me along. Since we didn't have much staff, only 1 or 2 people, I used to help out by welcoming, greeting customers, and taking their orders. Well, one lucky day, along comes Karen, all ready to make my day as wonderful as possible. I did the usual drill, open the door, welcome to cafe name. If the cafe is full, I normally tell guests if they have to wait or show them to a table. Karen came at a time when the cafe was almost empty, so she obviously could just sit anywhere. There was just one more customer, a nice middle-aged man in the corner. The cafe had a separate room with an opening to go into, which was for smokers. My parents were in there for privacy reasons, but could see me most of the time. Okay, on to the story. The cast includes CL, Crazy Lady, which is Karen, me, Nice Man, who was the only customer, employee, mum, dad. So, I go to Karen's table 1 minute later to take her order. She was seated on a table right next to the door. I say, "Are you ready to order, ma'am?" And she stares dead into me. "What?" "Ma'am, are you ready to order?" "Kid, I don't got time for your BS. You played around when I came in, now F off to wherever the hell your parents are before I call someone to get you out." Now, I'm wearing an employee tag with my name on it, and I'm pretty taken aback by her rude response. "Ma'am, I work here." "Here." I gestured to my tag. "That's obviously a fake. Wait till I tell the owner about you and have you banned. I'm best friends with him." Okay, so my mum's the owner? And Crazy Lady said him, so you get the point. "Ma'am, first of all, I do work here, and the owners are right here. If you know them, then you can ask them about me." "How dare you talk back to me like that? You know what?" And she grabs my arm. "I'll do this place a favor and get rid of you for them." She gets up and drags me out of the door. My parents have a view of the door and see me being dragged out. So do the employees, and they rush over to free me. My dad yells out, "Let go of him. Let go of my son." And he gets me out of her grip. "What do you think you're doing? How dare you touch me? I'll report all of you to the owner. I'm best friends with him." "I am the owner." "Liar, prove it." Gives my mum a hard push on the shoulder. Mall security had been observing from a distance and slowly coming closer. "We'll see about that." She gestures for the guards to come here. Crazy Lady, completely ignoring the fact that she saw my mum gesture for the guard, says, "Ha! Let's see you get thrown out for harassing a woman." Then turns to the guards. "Please help. They harassed me and pushed and shoved me, and that little brat abused and talked back to me." Guards, they already saw everything, said, "Sure, let's go talk about it." Crazy Lady, white as a ghost, says, "What? You're gonna throw me out? I know the mall's owner." Same old trick. Oh, Karen. "Let's go see him then. He would love to know what you did." I went home with my mum and left our dad to deal with it since I was having a breakdown and couldn't stop crying. Dad came home and told us the woman bawled and literally fell in front of the manager, who she was taken to, and apologized to my dad a lot and how she was just under a lot of stress. My father couldn't take it in that this woman had laid a hand on me and talked with the manager. In the end, they finally agreed on banning her from the mall and let her be on her way. The authorities did show up, but by then the issue was resolved and she was sent on her way. It might be something to laugh about today, but boy, I wish I never see that Karen again. Our next post is by user GingerbreadGal4, titled, "You Don't Even Know Your Job." I was about 11 years old at the time and on summer break from school. During the summers, I'd work in my dad's office. It's his business, answering phones, making copies, cleaning, etc., to keep me busy while I was not in school and give me a way to earn some money. The business is a construction type business, so it was pretty common for my dad to have to go out of the shop, to a store, to a job site, etc. And we wouldn't know when he would return. Usually there was another admin in the office to handle stuff, but very rarely I was there alone, for a few minutes / an hour or so max. I was never alone on the property, and there was always another adult there that I knew a phone number for and could call if I really needed to. This one day, the other admin was out, and my dad had to run out of the shop to help fix something. He walked out the door and the phone rang, and the following happened. CL, Crazy Lady, me is me. They say, "Hello, business name. How can I help you?" "I need to speak to my dad's name." "I'm sorry, he just stepped out of the office right now, but I can take a message for you and have him call you when he gets back." "Well, when will he be back?" "Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. There was a problem with some equipment and he had to go help. Well, I need to speak with him." "I'm sorry, but he's not in the building right now. I can have him give you a call if I can take a message for you." "No, I need to talk to my dad's name." I'm almost crying. I was 11 for frick's sake. "Look, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. I don't know when he will be back. Can I please just take... This is ridiculous. You don't know anything. How do you not know a time that he'll be back? You don't even know what your job is. What kind of company is this? How are you so incompetent? Me, holding back tears at this point and begging this lady to please just let me take a message. My dad, thank God, walked into the office at that moment and I cut crazy lady off to say, "I'm sorry, he just walked in. Hold on 1 second, please." So I say to him, "Dad, you have a call on line 1. "Well, who is it?" "I don't know. I'm crying now. She won't give me a name or a number, won't let me take a message, and screamed at me and I don't know why." Dad walks into his office and takes the call. I don't hear the entire exchange, but he put the call on speaker at this point and I did hear him say something to the effect of, "Yes, that was my daughter. She's working here for the summer. I asked her to have calls leave messages for me because I was not in the building." Crazy lady laughed kind of sheepishly and said, "Oh," I could practically hear her face turning red. She half mumbled an apology/excuse and hung up extremely fast. And that's why I still have some phone anxiety at the ripe old age of 25. I say some because it's gotten worlds better. I've worked on it a lot. Alright, our next post is by ThistleFizz, titled, "The Tone That Security Prevented Me From Doing My Job." So, I used to work as an entertainment lighting electrician and console programmer. One of my busiest times of the year was working New York Fashion Week, both spring and fall. It was a lot of organized chaos, but I enjoyed my time there. The most important place backstage is the hair and makeup stations in the dressing rooms. Rows of tables with mirrors and lights, with power for the hairstylists and makeup artists, for things like blow dryers and curling irons, and courtesy power for the models for phones and such. While we try to make sure that each station has at least 2 dedicated 20-amp circuits, invariably someone will come in and plug their equipment into the same power strip as the workstation next to them, and it will trip a breaker. Now, runaway shows are absolute chaos backstage. Models, hairdressers, makeup artists, production assistants, press, designers, it gets pretty crowded backstage. Security is understandably tight during this whole process, but guards don't actually come in until the day of the show. Because we're already in the space long before the show actually starts, I always try to introduce myself to security guards so they know who I am. Usually wearing a radio and a tool belt is enough for most people to clue into who we are, and if that fails, the all-access pass or wristband seals in. But I like to take the extra step and be prepared. So, one fine show day, I get a frantic call on the radio from the lead production assistant, the LPA, who says, "ThistleFizz, there's no power at the hair and makeup stations." Now, if it's actually just one station that's out, or all of them, it doesn't really make a difference. Even having one station out can be an emergency. So I start making my way over. On my way, I encounter LPA, who looks very relieved to see me and motions for me to follow. Backstage is packed to the gills, so she makes it to the dressing room entrance a little bit before I do. As I'm about to go in, I get stopped by security. Unfortunately, it's not the same guy that was at the dressing rooms before the show when I was introducing myself, so this guy doesn't know me. Security says, "Models only backstage." It's okay, I'm on the tech team, and I show him my white wristband. Nice try, gold wristbands only backstage. He grabs my arm and starts pulling me away from the dressing room entrance. "You need to go." Just then, I get another call on my radio. "ThistleFizz, where are you?" I key my mic and respond, "I'm being escorted out by security at the moment." Something has now finally clicked in Meatlug's head. Unfortunately for him, he was too slow to respond. LPA comes storming out of the dressing room. "Security, what the frick are you doing? He works here. He's my electrician. Let him go." "But he doesn't have a gold wristband." "Gold is for the dressing room only. White is for all access. Now let go of him." He let go of me, apologized, and I went about my business. I don't disparage the man for trying to do his job, but he probably should have been paying a bit more attention when his boss was going over wristband colors for the day. Alright, and our next post is by Montana13, titled, "Yes, I'm sure I'm me. No, I'm not dead. Not really an I do work here, more of an I'm supposed to be here. Now, when I was younger, I was very reclusive and rarely socialized with my classmates, or anyone for that matter. So while parents saw everyone else from the village I live in growing up, after we left primary school, elementary, I don't know, I was never really seen by anyone. Fast forward to our prom when we left secondary school, high school, aged 16, and one of the other mothers from our village decided it would be nice to get a class photo of everyone who went to our primary school. We all gathered together and were waiting for her to take the photo when she approached me and we had the following interaction. She says, "Excuse me, but this is a photo for our village school's pupils only." I'm confused and I'm like, "Yes, I know. That's why I'm here. I don't think you understand. This is only for school's pupils." It was at this point I realized that she didn't recognize me, so I tried to explain the situation to her. "Sorry, Mrs. Smith, I'm Montana. I went to village school with your son, John. I don't appreciate being lied to. It's only a photo, so just screw off, so I can take it." "I don't understand why you think I'd be lying. I've known John for the last 10 years. I even played rugby and football with him for 6 of those years. I know you're lying because Montana is dead. She died not long after they started secondary school." At this point, I was about to give up, but her son finally decided to set her straight. "Mum, this is Montana. Stop making a fool of yourself and just take the photo." "No, I know she died. Stop trying to make excuses for her to be in the photo." "Fine, this is her ghost. Just take the bloody photo." Not as dramatic as some of the other posts here, but it always makes me laugh when I think about it. Especially because it has always been a joke in my family that I look like the undead. So I guess she thought so too. Alright, our next 2 posts are by user Just a Cute Angle, titled, "Lady claims I'm a safety hazard at my own job." So obviously the expected I'm on mobile and bad at grammar and formatting lines, blah blah. Also, this is my very first post. For context, I'm 18 and female, and just started at a big chain auto parts store, even though I know little to nothing about vehicles and how to fix them. Family member got me in, but I'm getting by fairly well and haven't had a complaint about my advice yet, so fingers crossed. Even though I'm 18, I'm very short, 5 foot even, and have big baby face, so I often get mistaked for being 12 despite having pastel pink hair and a nose piercing. Our car star, entitled Tramp, co-worker I was closing with that night, and me. Story. Sorry if it's a long one, TLDR at the bottom. So this happened last week when I was stocking and facing shelves about half an hour before closing, as it's mandatory to have the store fully stocked and neat before leaving for the night. Our stores equip each location with a very tall rolling ladders, clearly marked with employees only, to help safely stock heavy parts on higher shelves. It was late, so there was barely anyone in the store, so I was stocking the top shelves where we keep our car wash supplies when I noticed this lady dressed in high-end business clothes. Something you don't see here very often. She keeps staring at me. I finally ask her if there's anything I can help her find, and the following conversation ensues. "Young lady, you know those ladders are for employees only, right?" I was a bit confused, cause I was literally stocking shelves and had the employee uniform on with the name stitched on it. Company policy. Yes ma'am, I work here. I just started a few weeks ago." I point to the logo on my work shirt. She looks me up and down and says, "Aren't you a little young to be working here? I thought they didn't hire until 18. "I am 18. My birthday was in January and I just started here." "BS. You get down from there right now before I get you kicked out for lying and playing on store equipment." Startled, I tell her, "No, I work here. I'm doing my job," and attempted to go back to stocking the shelves when she grabs my ankle and tries to pull me off a 6-foot ladder. Keep in mind that these ladders are as old as the store and aren't the most sturdy, so I grip the handles and pray it doesn't fall over while I yell at her to leave me alone. "No, you shouldn't be up here. You could get hurt." Ironic, I know. At this point, my coworker hears the commotion and comes out back to see what's going on. She walks around the corner to see me shaking my leg, trying to get out of her death grip before the ladder falls over, and trying to not cry or pee myself as I'm terribly afraid of heights. "Ma'am, what are you doing? Stop, she could fall. She shouldn't even be up there. She doesn't work here." While she was distracted, I quickly shake my uncle out of her death grip and speed down the ladder and over to my coworker. "I demand she be banned from this store for being disruptive and a safety hazard." "Ma'am, she works here. We just hired her 2 weeks ago." "Then prove it. Show me her schedule and her ID, now." "First of all, I'm not showing you my schedule, so you can come here and harass me. Secondly, I'm not showing you my ID. I don't have anything to prove to you. Please leave the store before I call the police." "Oh, I'll gladly call the police." And she pulls out her phone and dials 911. At this point, I'm so shaken up and tired and just want to go home. So coworker sends me to the back to try to finish up my duties before we close. About 10 minutes later, the police show up and entitled brat starts screaming about how I was being a safety hazard and kicked her in the face. The police look at me and again assume that I'm only 12 until my coworker explains to them what actually happened. The police request security footage, which we happily showed them. Of course, it was the entitled bear physically harassing me, and she started yelling that she was only looking out for my safety and did nothing wrong. Obviously, the cops did not buy it, and told her that if she was truly concerned for my safety, she should have taken it up with the manager on duty instead of physically harassing an employee. They escorted her out where she continued screaming. I told them I did not want to press charges, since she probably didn't live near here anyways. It's a fairly small town and everyone knows everyone type of deal, and I had never seen her before. It's been about a week since the incident, and I haven't seen her since, thankfully. But I think it's safe to say I may not last as long in this business, lol. Edit, I'm still working during the whole COVID-19, because our store was declared an essential business, and I've got a few more stories like this, if y'all want more. And what would you know, our next one is by that OP, titled, "You guys got what you wanted and she got what she deserved." Important. Many details allude to my last post on here about the same entitled tramp, so go read that one first for clarification. So, last night I posted my first Reddit story to this sub, because I was bored and all, and it got an unsuspected amount of support. Thank you so much. Along with that, I kept getting notifications at work about comments saying I should have pressed charges. I want to preface this by saying I didn't at the time because of excuses I made in the comments of the last post, but started regretting my decision. However, by the fate of the universe, or whatever god you believe in, or don't believe in I guess, who shows up at my work again today? Story. It's about noon and our store is usually dead empty around that time, and my co-workers one by one start taking their lunch breaks. I'm on the computer fulfilling online orders, checking them off on the computer, then going and collecting the parts from our inventory, when I hear our doorbell ring as a customer walks in. I look up and it's none other than the entitled brat from my story. She walks up to the counter before I can duck away to the back, and starts listing off things she needs at the speed of sound before she realizes who I am. When she finally takes a breath and a good look at me, the following ensues. "Wait a minute, what are you doing back here?" "I still work here, ma'am." I said it a bit more sarcastically than I meant, and turned back to my computer to finish the orders coming in. "There's no way, you're too young, and if you did work here, you would be fired for speaking to a customer so rudely." At this point I was done with her yelling at me, so I decided to ignore her and start collecting the parts for my orders. But as I was walking away, I felt something hit me in the back of the head. She ripped the computer mouse out of the computer and chucked it at me. Not to mention she broke the wire in the mouse when it hit the ground. At this point I'm furious. I had dealt with enough rude customers today and she was the last straw. And then she dropped the infamous Karen line. "If you really work here, go get me your manager." I was seeing red at this point, but I could not afford to lose my job. So I just went to the back, told the manager who the customer was. He had seen the security footage from before and agreed that if she tried anything again, she would be banned. and to call the police. After calling the police, we both walk to the front where she starts yelling at my manager that he shouldn't let kids roam freely around the store without supervision. It's a safety hazard and she should call the police on him. Now, my manager has always been super chill, but there's nothing he hates more than a stuck-up, entitled customer. When she finally stops screaming, he informs her that the police have already been called and she will be banned from this store. She looks dumbfounded. All the colour drained from her face and she bolted out the door as quickly as possible. When the police arrived, we showed them the security footage again, and I guess because of last time, they already had her name and stuff on file and could easily identify her. I'm not good with law stuff, but have an aunt who is planning on enlisting her help because ... They asked me again if I wanted to press charges, and this time I said yes. So I guess this story does have a happy ending after all. Our next post is by Bagel Guy, titled, "Just because I'm young doesn't mean I can't be the boss." Worked at a very popular nightclub. Multi-level, younger crowd downstairs, big spenders upstairs. We're talking $70,000 a night on our biggest nights and averaging around $30K on normal nights. We used to get tons of applications as staff made great tips. I started at the bar as a bouncer for a summer job when I was 19 and ended up liking it and being good at it. Anyway, fast forward a couple years and I'm 22 and have been made general manager of the bar with a staff of about 50. We opened during the week for deck drinkers and I would usually be dressed to impress on some of the days as I wasn't in the office all the time, or I would be doing work around the bar, minor fixes, painting and such. Anyway, I came down and let the staff in so they could get to work, and before we open, a girl knocks on the door. You know the type, looking down her nose at everyone with a holier-than-thou attitude. I open the door for her and ask how I can help her. She takes one look at me in my boots, work jeans and t-shirt, and walks right past me without so much as a how do you do, to tell the bartender she's looking for the manager so she can pass in a resume. I had the distinct pleasure of watching her face go red as I tell her I am the manager and tossing her resume immediately without looking at it. A lot of the customers we have that spend the big money look like nobodies. Next post is by user Ansley Star, titled, "I'm your server and the manager. Checkmate, Karen." I'm not sure if this is inappropriate for this group, as it was clear that I worked there but not in the capacity that the customer thought. But I'll push through. I'm in mobile, so all the obligatory "sorry I'm on mobile," just ignore them. A few years ago, I started serving at a family-owned restaurant in my town. I quickly became close with the owner and the owner's daughter, and helped them with the more than just serving. I became head server and then bar manager. Since it was a smaller restaurant, I kept serving because I made way more money that way. We had a special every day for wine. We had a shelf filled with wine bottles. Each shelf was either 15%, 25% or 50% off. It was a great deal, and typically we sold it for about $5 to $10 more than we were paying per bottle of wine. I don't know if this is well known, but a lot of restaurants upcharge their alcohol quite a bit in order to make a profit. Obviously, lol. So it was a great deal for people. One day, a lady comes in with her friends and immediately starts causing problems. I end up taking over for the server who got them right after they ordered their drinks, because they were so rude to her and it was her first full day of serving by herself. The lady ends up ordering one of the 25% off bottles, which ended up being around $7 more than you could buy it in a liquor store. How do I know this? At the end of her meal, I can hear her talking to her friends about how she's going to get the bottle of wine for free. She knew I was right there and could probably hear her, but I was just the server and probably dumb. Also overheard at an earlier time. I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid. That's okay. At this point, I'm so ready to tell her no, I actually won to buy a few times so she can try her crap. Sure enough, she snaps at me, and I mean literally snaps her fingers, and calls over and said, "I want you to get your bar manager. I looked online and found this bottle of Merlot for XXX, and you charged me XX plus 7. I'm not paying this ridiculous overcharge, and I also want to talk to them about the service here today." Now, Not to toot my own horn, I was a good server. There weren't many people in the restaurant at the time, so I know I didn't neglect them. I substituted food for them and didn't charge them any upcharges, even though a double-baked stuffed potato costs more than a side of chips, but whatever. She looked at me with such a smug face, until I smiled back at her and said, "Actually, I am the bar manager." I've never seen such a comical change in expression outside of a sitcom. She said, "You're the bar manager?" And I smiled and nodded and said, "Every restaurant will charge you more for products than they buy them for. This is how we make a profit. I'm not going to be discounting the wine. As far as issues with the service, I would be happy to listen to your complaints and take them into consideration for the future." She spluttered, grumbled, and told me, "Well, I'll never be coming back here." "Okay, good riddance, lady." And she didn't come back. Her friends did though, and became some of my favorite regulars. They told me a few months later that the only reason they went out with her was because she was one of their sisters-in-law, and she didn't have any friends. I wonder why. And our last post for today is by KK Wednesday, titled, "I worked there way longer than her." Sorry first post, but this is about the first job I had as a hostess at a breakfast restaurant. A bit of backstory. I had started there when I was 16. I'm 21 now. I had worked there for 3 years in total, but the last 8 months that I had worked there, I had maybe 1 to 2 shifts a week, due to a better full-time bartending job. So, one of my first shifts back after not having one for about a month and a half was a busy Sunday morning. I came in for my shift, and I had seen many new faces as the hosts rotated out pretty quick. I was running the register, taking payments, and I was also in charge of the seating chart, giving customers wait times and ensuring that they were seated when promised. I don't mean to toot my own horn at this, but I knew the restaurant very well, so I was capable of giving very accurate wait times. There were a bunch of tables that had to be bussed, and there were a bunch of other hosts just standing around and either talking or doing less important jobs. So I left the podium to go to request that those tables be cleared, and one of the new girls had the audacity to ask who I thought I was, and had said that I was new? So I proceeded to say, "What? I've been working here for almost 3 years now." And she still proceeded to ask why she should listen, and why I couldn't do it myself. Finally, the manager had came up and asked me what the problem was. I told her, and then she told that new girl that I wasn't lying and to listen to me. And oh my god, words can't explain how quickly she went pale and lost that stupid smug face. Thank you for listening. Shabbily dressed guy actually does work in the building, dude. So, years ago, I got a pretty sweet gig, working as security guard. Shift supervisor actually, which is important. In a building downtown. It was a mixed-use building, so we had a food court, retail stores on 2 levels, as well as 5 office towers. When I first started, one of the things all the guards are taught is to treat everybody they deal with respectfully. The building did have a lot of transients and homeless people wander through, but we prided ourselves on being courteous and polite to everyone. Well, one lazy Sunday morning, I get a frantic call from our building operator, the guy who watches all the security cameras, telling me I need to get to a specific bank of chairs on the 2nd floor. He's panicking and I can't make out much of what he's saying other than one of the guards' names. I go rushing over, worried that this guard, who's a bit of a loudmouth bully, might be in a fight or something. Oh boy, do I wish that that was the case. When I get there, the guard is berating an older gentleman who is seated in one of the chairs. Guy has a pile of papers and a coffee on a table in front of him and is pretty shabbily dressed. A pair of threadbare jeans, dirty running shoes, a faded and stretched out shirt, and a leather jacket that is more scuffed than the leather at this point. There's a ratty laptop bag on the floor leaning against the table. The guard is damn near purple in the face, screaming at this guy to get the hell out, pointing widely and yelling obscenities about how we don't allow pieces of garbage to live here. You've been here an hour, move along. I walk up, tell the guard to cool his heels. Hey guard, let's just take a breath. What's going on here? And then I greet the gentleman in the chair and ask what he seems to be the problem. The second gentleman gets 2 words out. Guard lights up on a tangent about how this homeless drug addict is loitering and needs to leave, but won't get up. I shush him and try talking to the gentleman again, and this time he got out 4 words before the guard interrupts again, and this time starts threatening to literally flip the chair forward to toss the gentleman onto the floor. I finally have enough with the guard and tell him to go to the office and cool off, and that I will deal with the gentleman. Guard begrudgingly leaves, and I apologize to the gentleman about the guard's overreaction. Gentleman basically says, I appreciate it. I work in X tower on X floor and forgot my keys. I was waiting until my assistant arrives and can let me in. I automatically offer to let the gentleman into his office. We do it all the time and have specific protocols for it. And he accepts, so away we go to the elevator. We reach his floor and then the door opens, which is when I realize where I am. Every single night we patrol every single office space of every single tower, except for one. On one floor, the entire space is occupied by a legal firm that is worth multi-millions, and we aren't allowed in that office ever. Yep, I'm standing on that floor. Gentleman steps into the floor lobby, and I have to excuse myself to go to get the key for his office. We aren't allowed to carry a copy of it, so I can let him in, and he just nods. I race down to the building operations room, snag the key, and race back as fast as I can. When I get back to the floor, I open the office door and the gentleman invites me in as he goes to shut off the alarm. I then have to awkwardly ask him for his ID and to see his office so I can verify he's allowed to be there. He chuckles and obliges me. He's the frickin' owner of the legal firm. He thanks me for letting him in and I leave. About 20 minutes later, the president of our security company arrives on site with 2 other people, and the guard who blew a gasket is escorted off-site. Fired. As soon as I left the lawyer, he called the manager of the building at home to have words, and manager then called security company who came down personally. I got a nice compliment for how I handled things, and I learned why we had the rule of treating everybody with respect. Now our next post is by user Flickin' Snorty, titled, "You look like you're 16. What makes you think you know anything about beer?" So this happened about 1.5 years ago when I was a bartender at a high-end restaurant. This isn't all verbatim, but exchange is as good as I can remember it. I'd been working at this place for over a year, and had worked my way up to shift support / bar manager, and was 19. One day, I was sat up at the bar drinking with some of our regulars and a few colleagues that had the afternoon off, and a man came up to the bar to order. There was only one bartender working, as it was after the Sunday lunch rush, and it was always quiet by that point. This bartender was new, and I just handed the shift over to him. He was capable of running the shift on his own, but hadn't quite learned the drinks menu. The gent that had just walked in to order started asking about the beers in a really snobbish manner, such as, "What are your Weiss beers? Which lager is the most crisp? And do you have any really hobby lagers?" Basically, he was asking questions about any type of beer possible just to be complicated and sound like he knew his stuff. No one really comes in asking those types of questions if they don't have a specific flavor profile in mind. E.g., you only typically ask about Weiss beers if you want a wheaty beer. You only ask about crisp beers if you want a refreshing lager, and only ask about hoppy lagers if you're into IPAs. Anyways, I overheard this, and offered my own guidance as the poor new recruit was looking at me like a deer in the headlights. I just ran through the menu and suggested the correct drinks for his questions, to which he just exhaled through his nose and outright said, "You're about 16, and shouldn't even be drinking here. What makes you think you know about beers?" I'm a polite person, and I'm really not a fan of unnecessary conflicts, so didn't offer any wisecracks or smugness. I just told him, "I heard you asking some pretty tough questions, and new recruit's name started last week. I thought I'd help out, as I'm off shift and it's a good training point for him as I'm his manager." To which he joked about the new starter being old enough to be my dad. I'm not sure what he was trying to gain from throwing weak insults at a stranger, but my mind switched into work mode, and I just started listing off drinks on our menu like I was advertising half the breweries in Europe. I asked what flavor profiles he was after, if he wanted a light ale or a heavy lager, high ABV or low. If he was looking to eat, then perhaps one of the wines would be better suited if a heavy beer is preferred, as the special was fish. I finished off with the new bartender's name. Can you pop staff discount on for this gent? It'd be nice to see him back here when I'm working. Proceeded to give him my till and walk through the steps to apply it. Lo and behold, this bloke orders a pint of Carling, because all the fancy beers were way too expensive. Imagine that. Trying to show off to a bartender that you know more than them, and then ordering the cheapest beer on tap. I don't miss these type of guests one bit. And our next post here is by user Only Here to Shout, titled, Who did you say your father was? So not quite an I do work here moment, but I don't know where else to put this. I might mess up some things, not because my native language is something else, I just suck at English. So the cast are me, store manager, co-worker, and random customer. A few years ago, I was working for my auntie in the 2 convenience stores she owns in town. It was a temporary thing that stretched 2 years. Long story on that one. And every day was the same. Punch in, work, punch out. My father was pretty well known around town for all the years he worked in automotives, as a parts store manager, mechanic, parts manager, etc. One day I was behind the counter, waiting on customers, and someone came up to the counter, and as I was scanning their items, I noticed they had a fountain drink. So I went up to ring it, and I'm interrupted. Random customer is like, I'm a family, so I get these for free. In which, family like my aunts, nieces, and nephews, and my aunts and uncles get drinks for free from the fountain and slushy. I'm like, oh okay, what's your relationship to the owner? Mind you, I know my aunties, uncles, and cousins very well, but not their kids. And consider I'm about 19 to 20 at the time, and I was one of the younger ones. So of course some cousins had kids, but the oldest wasn't even out of high school yet. He looks me dead in the eye and says, I'm Brett, my father's youngest son. I couldn't help but sit there for a couple of minutes with a look of disbelief that he just said he was me? So I decided to have some fun with it. I look over to the store manager, my cousin. Hey, store manager, does this look like my father's name's youngest son? She took a moment to get a good look at him. She's like, he's my father's name's youngest son? I know, right? You know what that means. You finally have a younger brother with the same name? The random customer just sat for a moment with the most confused look on his face, mixed with a good amount of shock, not seeming to realize that the name on my name tag in big bold letters that read Brett. I looked over to my coworker. You hear that, coworker? I have a younger brother with the same name as me. Isn't that great? Oh, that's great. But he looks a bit old to be your youngest sibling. The guy looks about late 30s. I look a little older than I am, but everyone usually says 1 or 2 years older than I actually am. He's like, what are you talking about? None of us could believe this guy has not caught on yet. So I have to look him dead in the eye and tell him, nice to meet you. My name is Brett. Points to name tag. I'm my father's name's youngest son. He looks around at all of us. Clearly the random customer finally understood. So I ring up the drink, he paid and left with us still laughing. Bonus, his girlfriend came in a couple of days later and claimed to be my oldest sister, not knowing who I was. Spoiler alert, it was not my sister. Right, our next post is by Karen RN64, titled Airline Pilot. So my daughter and I were flying to visit my mother-in-law in Florida. The last leg of our journey was in a puddle jumper small enough that they even weighed our purses. We were sitting in our seats along with another woman and her 2 daughters, when a young woman in a white shirt climbed into the cockpit. The other woman leaned over, tapped her on the shoulders and said, I believe that is the pilot's seat, young lady. You will have to move. The young woman turned around and said, I am the pilot. The other woman then asked if she was old enough to fly. The pilot repeated, I am the pilot, lady. And not only was she a good pilot, but we hit a thunderstorm on the way that we barely felt. Rightio, our next post is by user Needs More Bokeh, titled, Did you come here yesterday? Hope you enjoy my first story. It's a bit long, and since English is not my first language, I guess some mistakes might be around. So, Background. I'm a structural engineer, and for better or worse, I have some experience at assessing structural damage on terrain, and because of that, I was hired in late 2017 to examine damaged buildings after the earthquake in Mexico City and surroundings. My job was to go around the property, identify and document damage caused by the earthquake or aggravated by the earthquake, and then prepare a report that would be used for insurance claims and other necessities. In theory, I had certain authority to excavate a building, but luckily it was never necessary. Another thing I have to add is that I have a bit of a baby face. More like a lot of a baby face. I easily get mistaken for someone much, much younger. So here I am. I was assigned to check this particularly old factory during the day. A pretty big building of near 6,000 meters squared, one of the not so good areas of the city. I arrive roughly at 9:45, 15 minutes before the appointment, and the only entrance is this huge metal door with a smaller blue door on the corner. I go and knock the small door. No answer. Only at the third attempt, someone opens. He was like a small goblin. Opens the door and looks me up and down. Security goblin's like, "Who are you?" "I'm me. I come from company for a meeting with the owner." "And who sent you?" Me, a bit confused. "I come from company. I have an appointment with the owner." I proceed to explain to him what I was going to do and my schedule on a paper that I was carrying. "And who are you?" I'm confused about the goldfish-like retention capability of this guy, but I give him my name and all the information again. He huffs and says he is going to check, closes the door. 10:15 and I'm still in the entrance, waiting, and the security goblin has not appeared. At this point, I had called the central office that was coordinating all the inspections, and they were frenetically trying to see why I wasn't allowed to enter. After knocking maybe 5 or 6 times, the security goblin opens again. "What do you want?" "I've been waiting for half an hour. Could you find the owner?" Security guard looks me up and down again. Somehow my white construction helmet and blue vest with the company name were not enough to make him connect the dots. He squints his eyes and says, "And who are you?" I'm dumbfounded. It actually takes me a second to answer because I needed to be sure if I hadn't fallen into a creative punishment in purgatory. I give him my name, company name, and a brief explanation of why I had an appointment with the owner. He squints again, without a word, closes the door. By 11:15, I'm absolutely fed up and asking the central to leave. They finally answer that they had spoken to the owner and confirmed he is expecting me. At this point, I had forgotten how many times I had knocked on the door, and my patience is at the limit. Still, I'm containing myself to keep the best, most professional image I can. The security goblin opens again. He is somewhat still unimpressed that I have stood near an hour and a half in front of the door, and says, "Who are you?" I'm now convinced this is some sort of practical joke, but I'll follow. "I'm me, I come from company." "And what do you need?" "I have an appointment with the owner. I understand he is waiting for me." Suddenly, his eyes opened wide and his face changed to the expression of someone who has gone to the depths of his mind and returned with a revelation. "Oh, but didn't you come here yesterday?" At this point, I admit I lost it. I fully lost my cool, and with an exasperated but still not screaming tone, I snapped back. "I have been in the same place for the last hour and something. How can you be that incompetent?" It seems that was the password, because now, Security Goblin, visibly scared, let me in immediately and pointed to a door at the other side of the internal parking lot. I passed by while he was muttering, "You didn't need to scream at me," like a hurt kid. Inside, there was the owner and some other guy. Before I can even present myself, he berates me for being more than an hour late, so he cannot go with me to the inspection. I explain briefly that the guard wouldn't let me in since 9:45. Apparently this wasn't so rare because he sighed heavily and muttered, "That fat idiot." He excused himself and the other guy accompanied me. I could hear the screams of the owner at the distance while entering the second floor. By the time the check was done, no severe damages, everything was easy to repair. I found the owner again. Apparently, the security guard judged that I was too young and my accent was too weird to be who I claimed, so he didn't even ask, but instead went away and forgot twice I was there. I was 31. Rightio, and our next story is by the same OP, titled, "Shut up kid, I want the engineer." Second story. Since the first one was much more appreciated than I could have hoped, I began looking into old anecdotes and I remembered this gem from 2011. Again, a small preemptive excuse since English is not my first language. Sadly, or luckily, I don't remember any more stories that fit this particular sub. That said, here we go. At that time I was 26, just out of university with my title and master both completed by December 2010. Almost immediately, I went into a big engineering company, specialized in tall buildings. I was still green with little to no experience in the real world, and by nature, I'm also evasive when it comes to conflict. So I'm not exactly the wise choice when it comes to clash against aggressive or too dominant people. Still, I was able to fake confidence and capable enough to quickly gain the trust of clients. Because of that, I was already managing projects with some degree of autonomy at 6 months into the job. That said, it was November, already very warm. Chile, so summer in November, and the office was working at its usual pace. That is, calm, but 2 steps away from total panic. It was morning when my boss called me. Let's call him Ray. He's a great guy, professional, but often a bit dense when it comes to social cues. To this day, we're still good friends, despite both not working there anymore. When I arrive at his desk, he pulls up a set of schematics. He's like, "Hey, I have a meeting this afternoon with this particular client, but I cannot go. They have some kind of issues, so it's important that someone from the office is there if things go difficult." Difficult? I asked. Yeah, they made a frick up and want to blame us. Still, everything is on the drawings, you shouldn't have any issues. Sure, I'll take it. The meeting time came and I went off the taxi in front of this 22-story building. The lobby was already finished in floors of black marble and roof in white marble with diffuse white lighting. Round, double-height columns in stainless steel. As I entered, something calls my attention. There are scratches on the floor. Oh, also in the columns. Fuck! Also in the doors. This is bad. These are telltale signs of horrible construction management. I take the stairs to the 4th floor, and the construction auditor, Phil, receives me. He's a large guy with a short beard and stern but amicable face. "So, Yuan needs more bokeh. What happened to Ray?" "Hi, yes, he sent me in his place." "Well, we're about to start. Just sit by my side and don't intervene unless it is necessary." "Anything I need to know?" I ask. He smiles me back with a grin. "Just wait and enjoy." So we enter this large improvised meeting room. There is electricity, but the floor is still bare concrete and the doors are temporary. The table is enough for maybe 20 people. On the corner, there is a small guy with a curved back and sketchy appearance. He could be described as a weasel in office attire. No one pays any attention to my presence as everyone is taking seats. I sit beside Phil, near the middle of the table. The weasel on the far head, and the closest head is still empty. That guy is the construction manager. He is blaming us for the screw-up, he says, pointing at the weasel. We wait for maybe 5 minutes with only a rumor of small conversations in the place. Finally, the door opens up, and a peacock-like office Chad enters. Black trousers, white and pink vertically striped shirt, and big golden sunglasses where a helmet should have been. A large golden watch, kettlebell-sized, completed the image. "Sorry I'm late, let's begin the meeting," Chad announces. I assume for his commanding tone that he is the representative of the owners. After some minimal greeting to all the people in the room by the architect, he gives the word to Chad. I take a glance at Phil. He is expectant. Now, Chad raises from the table, points to the weasel, and the party starts. "Explain to me how the frick you forgot to build doors for the elevator machine room. We are already delayed a month. You made a fudging mess in the lobby, and now we have to demolish a wall so the elevator people can enter." Okay, sir," the weasel answered. "First of all, these changes have been asked by you. You asked for the lobby to be left ready while I still have to work with people there, and you have it fully scratched. How the frick is that my responsibility? Turns out Chad and the Weasel were not only severely unprofessional, but also hated each other with such passion that they had to be put in opposite sides of the table, because more than once they went too close to a fist fight. They discussed screaming at each other for maybe 5 minutes. Chad is fully aggressive and red, attacking relentlessly. The manager, just as his appearance suggests, sneaks in between all the attacks and deflects responsibilities, blaming everything under the sun. The rest of the assistants are just expecting to let time pass quickly and leave, but Phil is happy. He was one step away from having some popcorn. I lean to him and whisper, "So they forgot an access for the machine room?" Not only that, but the Weasel also declared some construction molds as stolen, and they made an investigation. Turns out they are still inside that closed room. "What?" I asked a bit louder. "Hey kid," Chad addresses me despectively, "shut up," and goes back to the fight. After some more punches back and forth, the Weasel is running out from ways to deflect his mistake. He tries one more. "But this wasn't our fault. The door was not in the structural engineer's drawings." He forms a smug smile. "Plus, Ray didn't even come to the meeting. If any penalties are to be applied, it is to them for their incompetence." Boy, that was my cue. I clear my throat, but fail in the first impression, entering in a timid way. "Well, shut up kid," the Weasel snaps, and looks to Phil. "Phil, keep your assistant quiet." I decide to make me understand more clearly. I pull the set of schematics, letting them fall heavily over the table and catching the attention of both Chad and the Weasel. Over the schematics, I put my construction helmet, with the logo of the engineering firm. Silence takes the place. If I may, I now speak in front of a pale Weasel and a Chad who internally debates if showing shame for calling me kid or do a victory lap around the Weasel. I'm actually a structural engineer from company, and Ray sent me in his representation because his schedule was full. Mind if we check what appears on the drawings? Here we are. Yes, as you can see, the door is here, and I think this cannot be attributed to confusion from structural design. I agree, Phil comments with a huge smile. The rest of the table is trying to hide their amusement. I continue. So that settles it. I can make here a procedure for the demolition and installation of the access, or if you prefer, I can send it approved by Ray tomorrow. Everyone is silent, in a second of contained storm, but Phil isn't done yet. He leans in and puts his hands over the table. Now, we need to see what we will do to recover the supposedly stolen equipment that is still trapped inside the machine room. And what will you do about the 2 workers that you fired this morning? He looks to the Weasel, who is just about to melt and escape by first crack he can find. Chad now turns into a raging volcano. He was so furious that his blood pressure could have been measured in atmospheres. You fired people without proof? And then another 5 minutes of berating exploded until the architect, who was supposed to be coordinating the meeting, called to a truce so they could advance with the problem of the electric and water crews. Phil and I were dismissed, but while the door was closing, I could hear Chad screaming again. I sighed, relieved. Truth is, I was shaking a little. What a mess. "Nah, this was a quiet meeting," Phil said, smiling. "Tell Ray he missed a good one. Pleased to meet you, kid." In the end, the construction was finished with 5 months of delay. Both the Weasel and Chad were fired from their respective companies. Ray just laughed at my story and told me it was good that Chad hadn't tried to punch me because he wanted to fight everyone all the time. I never found those 2 again, but I found Phil on another project 2 years after. Same mischievous old man. To my luck, to this day, I never had another meeting like that dreadful one. Entitled lady gets what she deserves after assaulting me and triggering a PTSD episode. Satisfying ending. So, this is my first time posting, so if I do something incorrectly, please let me know and please be gentle. I'm also on my mobile, so formatting could be wonky for all I know. I'm a busy mum, so I may not be able to edit in a timely manner. Sorry in advance. Trigger warning, PTSD and mental of assault. I do not elaborate on that assault as it isn't social media friendly, obviously. Our cast are me, just me, entitled person/parents, and AE, actual employee. Our support cast are security, vet cop, cousin cop, hubby, and entitled parents' kid. Context. This is the experience of a time I was just done with people for the day and it got really messy. For work, I had to dress in upscale business attire with some antiquated ideas on ladies' wear. Like you must wear heels and nylons. I would do any shopping or errands on my way home from work. It was years ago, so it will not be verbatim, obviously. I don't have an eidetic memory. Story. That day had been a long one due to my, literally, crazy boss. So while I was shopping, I had 2 people already ask me for help. It was an upscale mall and I was dressed similarly to the store managers. The first 2 were polite and apologized for the honest mistake, and I was jovial about it since they were so nice. But this is the encounter, to the best of my recollection, with the third person. Yup, the third in under 15 minutes. I was walking away from the shoes to the ladies' lingerie section, as I was shopping for nylons, when the dreaded "excuse me" happened. So entitled parent says, "Excuse me?" Me, knowing what's happening and what that tone meant, what kind of person probably barked so rudely and relatively loud, especially in a high-end department store. I was completely done with all personal interactions for the day, but especially one that could be draining. So of course, I ignore entitled parent, pretending that I didn't hear her. The entitled parent being strident and very loud now, moving much, much closer. "Excuse me?" She was setting up me off already by being too close, and now I was whining in my head. So I sighed quite audibly on purpose. I turn around and go, "Yes? You're the manager. Where is XYZ? No, I don't remember what it was that she was looking for exactly, and I don't really care, to be honest. "I don't know, ma'am," and she cuts me off before I can finish with the "I don't work here" thing. "Well, you should. I'm a frequent and loyal customer, so..." And I kid you not, the woman shooed me away. She was all indignant, wanting me to go find out ASAP. I'm just stood blinking at her. "Well, go find out already," shouting directly in my face with spittle to boot. "Ma'am, I don't work here," with a dead-eyed expression is what I said. No, I didn't even care enough to expound upon that. "Well, I never. You are the rudest employee I've ever encountered. Get your boss." Me, frustrated and not caring anymore, because she now had shooed and snapped her fingers at me. "I'm not an employee, so I'm not going to do anything but continue my own shopping. You should be ashamed of yourself for your inexcusable behavior." The entitled parent, confused but going with it. "Sure you aren't," she said sarcastically. "Just go find out. I'm running late and I need XYZ. "Ma'am, I still don't work here." So I turn and take off. By the way, the employees at this store would never walk away from a shopper or be rude. Not ever. I can hear her getting even more aggravated as I leave, but I don't care. She was rude. As I'm looking at the display of hose in the lingerie section to find the correct one, which takes a few minutes as they aren't plentiful, I need topless ones for open-toed pumps, and they rearranged it since last time I was here, I hear more screeching. "There she is!" pulling the employee behind her with just the magnetic force of her displeasure. I don't turn, just knowing this is going to get ugly with the mood I'm now in. The employee looks confused and a lot worried. They're like, I think there's been I want that manager's name and her boss now. She will be fired immediately and give me corporate's number. This is disgraceful." So I slowly turn around. I should warn that while I'm normally very tolerant and love to help, older people who need it especially, I greatly dislike stupid, racist, or loudly ignorant people, and I have a temper. Entitled parent stepped into my space again. I let loose, yelling in entitled parent's face. I hate that for good reason. "Ma'am," very obviously sarcastic, "for the last time, I do not work here." I step away and turn around, trying to calm myself and avoid a catastrophe. It's silence. Legit only the classical music playing in the background. I'm desperately trying to find the nylons quickly so I can get the items and get the heck out of there ASAP. Desperately trying to control my temper. I see them and grabbed all they had. Like 5, I don't even know. Didn't even check them to ensure they were the correct sizes. That's when it happened. That's when it all went to crap. Entitled parent grabs my arm, pinching it hard as her hand slips on my silk blouse. I bruise easily, so it ended up being a huge doozy later. She grabbed me so hard she pulled the seam on the sleeve. I think I still have it in my back of my closet. I never did wear it again, so I'm not positive. What entitled parent didn't know that escalated the situation drastically was I have extreme PTSD from being assaulted by a gang, and any grabbing of my arms from behind me is a major and usually very violent trigger. I instantly flash back. Sorry, this is hard for me to recount, as even now I shake when thinking about it or the attack. This next part hubby told me since he was watching the security tapes later. I dropped my items, jerked my arm away, backed up into as good of a corner as I could, and started screaming in a panic. No, don't touch me. I slide down the wall at my back with my hands over my ears. I've gone into freeze and hide mode and repeated, no, 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 no. Entitled parent then made the mistake of moving closer again in an aggressive manner. I remember some of this part. I looked up into her malicious face and went straight into fight mode, standing up abruptly and into her face screaming aggressively, "No, you don't get to hurt me." I'm not entirely present yet, but know something's off, as there are no men near me. This is a huge lucky break, because any men near me at the moment would have immediately made me go berserk and attack. I'm still in my aggressive stance, but started saying something along the lines of, "Just leave me alone, go away," and more, "No, no, 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 no." Entitled parent backed up, and I imagine she thought I was some crazy person, and she would have been correct right then. Somehow the store employee knew I wasn't entirely there, and traumatized somehow. My pupils were probably blown wide, and with the automatic sobbing, my mascara was already streaked down my cheeks. Hubby said I looked haunted when he picked me up later, as I was too distraught to drive home. The employee calmed me down a little as I noticed I wasn't being attacked at that moment. That's when security arrived to see us still sobbing, shaking, firmly on the throes of panic attack from the flashback, and adrenaline-crazed person. Problem: security was all male. Back into the flashback I go, screaming and freaking out violently. I know they took entitled parent away at some point, and I hazily remember the employee sitting on the floor, cross-legged nearby but not too close. She was talking to me in soothing tones, but I don't remember what was said. For all I know, she was repeating supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or some alien language. I wouldn't let anyone else near me. I was too hysterical, crying. I was starting to realize, in relief, it was a flashback only, and became more and more embarrassed and horrified. The employee got me to give me her phone to call my ICE contact, which was my hubby. He told me later, he explained what likely happened and told them to put him on speaker. He started doing this "you were safe" routine and was on his way. That's what really got me out of the episode enough to start letting them help me, at a distance of course. We all ended up in the back offices, as they called EMTs, because I was in shock, was white, I'm very pale, but bloodless is a different kind of pale, and my heart rate went bonkers and almost fainted. I got my medications out of my purse, took it, and waited as the EMTs came in to do their job. The cop who was with me was a war vet and knew exactly what was going on, how to not set me off, what to ask, etc. Entitled parent was in a different area and was still going insane about the psychotic employee who attacked her and all sorts of threats. So when hubby got there, he heard what she was told the cops he knew I would press charges on anyone who grabbed me and treated me like that. Turns out that another cop over with entitled parent was a distant cousin of my hubby, same last name from the same great-great-grandfather or something. They talked a bit outside the room, and I guess entitled parent overheard that he was my hubby. She tried to blame my hubby for the PTSD attack, as he must have abused me. Hubby disabused that notion by laying down some facts, explaining why I freaked out, what happened to me, that I was a minor at the time, and that it was before we met. Hubby says he also called her an idiotic hag as he left. All the info shut her up temporarily, but didn't stop her entirely. Hubby came in to comfort me and held me. Police finally asked once I was calm enough if I wanted to press charges, and I did, of course. They had already seen the recording from the security by that point, so only needed me to tell them what had happened and to confirm why I freaked out. Entitled parent was told she was being arrested and started up the banshee screaming again. The store manager said he would be banning her for her behavior indefinitely. At some point during that, entitled parent's kid, a teenage girl, showed up frantic looking for her mum. Mall security had escorted her and made quite the ruckus. I felt bad for the kid and saw her as she waited for her dad with security when we were escorted out to the public part of the store. Entitled parent kept up the "I'm innocent and this is a misunderstanding" and threatening me for doing this to her all the way until court, supposedly. I really thought I would have to testify for a while, which was very stressful. The prosecutor's office called me a couple months later to tell me that she was taking the deal after the CCTV footage and photographic proof of the ripped shirt and progress of the huge bruise she gave me was shown to her. It was a bad case that would be expensive to fight for her to only lose with that evidence. She was a first-time offender, so she got the option to do a program where they do intensive personal and some group psychotherapy, anger management, rehab, support groups, community service, and such depending on the offences. If completed, the record gets wiped clean. She took it, and as part of the deal, she had to plead guilty in front of the judges beforehand. So no testifying about it and my previous assault in open court. I was very grateful for that. One last bit of justice happened though. Her work found out, and due to a clause in her contract, they fired her immediately. Found out about that one from the prosecutor too. Haven't heard about her since, never bothered to check up on her as she did her sentence and wasn't important. By the way, I still hate hosiery, and this wasn't the only time someone grabbed me in public and I freaked out on them. Most recently was this last summer. Also, sorry it's so very long. I needed to trim it down without taking out too much of the needed information, and to anyone worried, I still do go to therapy, support groups, etc., and have since the gang assault happened 20 years ago. You don't get over something like this, but I'm managing pretty well for the most part. Edit. This was in the Greater Phoenix metro area, and it happened over a dozen years ago, so I'm doing much better for those concerned. I could get a service dog for crowding, but they are expensive, and insurance doesn't like to cover them if they aren't for the blind. I've had a lot of time to recover, so the need isn't there as much for it to justify the costs, and then there's the fact that I'm slightly allergic to dogs. I use symbols on the censored words mainly for my personal well-being, to not trigger other survivors or bots and cause it to be removed until reviewed. I'm keeping it that way for those who want to read in places that those words would jump out of the pages, and for all those who are survivors like me, as I don't want them to be triggered by the words as well. FYI, writing this took a lot emotionally, and just putting it in the text was very blatant. I didn't need to add that. This has been cathartic though. Thank you. You guys are awesome and so supportive. I can't believe how amazing you all are. For whoever gave me awards, you're the best. I don't know what some of them mean, as I'm still relatively new to Reddit, but I'll figure it out. Well damn, that was a long one, but I really hope you guys enjoyed that one. And our next post today is by user Local Librarian, titled, "Actually Ken, I don't work here anymore, or for you." So a friend of mine recently reminded me of this, the absolute best time I ever had dealing with a Karen in the wild. It happened about 30 years ago, so I'm going strictly by memory here. I also have no clue what the name for a male Karen is, so I'll call him Ken. Sorry this came out so long, but I think you'll enjoy it. TLDR at the bottom. So I used to work for a chain convenience store, and back in the late 80s, it ran into financial trouble. Corporate decided that to cut costs, they would sell off/shut down all locations that didn't have a gas station attached. This included my location. Once the stores were sold/closed, our positions would be eliminated and we'd be out of a job. Although, I was the only assistant manager for our location, so I was effectively running things as corporate had decided to pull my manager off to a different location, and the assistant would be good enough, since the store was closing anyway. Now on to this story. Our cast are HH, head honcho guys from corporate, in charge of selling the store, slightly involved near the end. Ken, entitled dude who bought our location, and of course, moi, smiley face. Once Chain announced that we were closing the stores, it was no secret that we would be shutting down. Of course, us employees were still expected to give good customer service. That was usually no problem as we were in a good area and had pretty decent customers. They liked us, we liked them. But at the same time, we had no flips to give for the occasional Karens. It was nice being able to shut them down. What were they gonna do, fire us? Ha! Good times. I wish I could remember specific instances, but 30 years. They all kinda run together now. The most entitled of all though was Ken. Turns out, he had bought our location from Chain and would be taking over in about a month and a half. During that time, I was working with head honcho guys from corporate, doing things at store level for the sale. Meanwhile, Ken came in a few times a week, demanding that certain things be done as if he already owned the place. He wanted us to change displays, order specific products, etc. Head honcho guys had already told me to ignore his demands, so all of them were met with some variation of, "No Ken, I work for Chain, not for you, and this isn't your store yet," which sent Ken off in all his huffing glory, yelling that I wouldn't be acting like that once he ran the place. Fast forward to the final day. All the other employees had worked their last shifts, and as acting manager, I opened the store that morning. HH guys arrived to go through whatever they needed, and shortly before noon, Ken showed up. Ken and head honcho guys went into the back, and once they came back out, we closed the store in order to finalize everything. Head honcho guys and I cashed out the register for the last time, and most importantly, I turned over my key to the store. Once that was done, something close to the following happened. Head honcho guys are like, "Okay Ken, we're done, it's all yours now," and they start packing up to leave. And I'm like, just making sure, Chain no longer owns this location. Ken is in charge now, yes? Head honcho confirms, so I step out from behind the counter. Of course, Ken starts yelling. I think yelling was his default mode. "Where do you think you're going? Home? What does it look like? You get back here and get your ass back behind that counter where it belongs." I'm calmly like, "No, I don't work for you." "What do you mean, no? I told you things would be different when I took over here, and now you have to do what I tell you to do." Me, with a huge grin on my face, say, "You just don't get it, do you?" Ken looks confused. "You bought the store, you bought the inventory, but you did not buy the employees, and you sure as hell didn't buy me. So I'll say it one last time, and try to get this through whatever the functional cells you may be floating around in your empty head. I don't work for you. Never have, never will. And since chain store number 1234 no longer exists, I don't work there anymore. Since I'm no longer needed here, nod to the head honcho guys, I am leaving." Ken starts sputtering and yelling incoherently, realizing he now has nobody to work the register, as I walk to the doors for my last time. Of course, I can't help myself. As I'm pushing the door open, I turn around and give Ken my best customer service smile and a cheery, "Have a nice day." If I remember correctly, the store didn't open again for a couple of days, at least while Ken tried to hire some employees. But anyone from the neighborhood who had seen him treating us so badly before the sale wanted nothing to do with him, and even once it reopened, it didn't last long. ETA, I've seen some comments going on about employment contracts, how our jobs should have transferred to the new owners, etc. So just to clear things up a bit, I hope. 1. US doesn't have employment contracts, as apparently other countries do. As noted in the original post, Corporate told us up front that once the store was sold and shut down, we would be out of a job. 2. If Chain had been bought out by another company, then maybe our jobs would have transferred over. But Ken bought one location, not Chain as a whole or even multiple locations. 3. Ken never asked any of us if we wanted to stay on and work for him. As one commenter added, "You don't have enough money to afford me anyway," or something close to that. 4. Several commenters have tried to guess which chain this was, but I haven't seen a correct guess yet, as of this edit anyway. I'm a bit hesitant to add that, since much to my surprise, Chain is still in existence. Although I googled them after posting this story, and according to their website, they're down to less than a dozen stores now. Righto, and our next post is by Dragon Ridge 101, titled, "Old Lady Tries to Get Her Phone Fixed at a Japanese Restaurant." So I used to work at a Japanese restaurant in a fairly big shopping center, and we were next door to a computer phone and repair place, keep in mind. It was a normal Sunday. We opened at 4 o'clock for dinner, but workers would show up 45 to 30 minutes early to prep. So I get to work around 3:10ish, and my boss hasn't arrived yet to unlock the door for workers. And a random lady walks up to me and asks, "Do you work here?" And I say, "Yes," thinking she's talking about the restaurant. She says, "I have Cox Home Life," or whatever it's called, and it won't let me view my security cameras from my phone. I'm confused at this point. Think she's maybe just asking a young person if they know what to do about it. And I say, "I'm sorry ma'am, I don't have Cox, I have Verizon. I don't think I know what to do to help you." And she goes, "It doesn't matter what you have, you should know how to help me. Where's your boss?" And I say, "He's not here yet. I'm waiting for him to unlock the doors." And she says, "I want to talk to him." My boss was Chinese, and I had a lot of trouble understanding him. I say, "He doesn't speak very good English." Then she says, "He should, he has to run a business." Then I finally realized she thought that I worked at the PC place. Yeah, I'm kinda slow. Then I say, "Ma'am, this is Japanese restaurant. You want next door." And then she goes, "Oh!" Then walks away. Then my boss walks up and asks what that was all about, and I tell him some old lady wants me to fix her phone. Radio gamers, and our last post for today is by EyeReadReddit, titled, "From Raging to Wholesome, oh my." So, a while back I posted an Idontworkherelady story, which I was at a local Walmart, and ended up having a manager screaming and hollering at me from behind, which I don't hear due to my severe hearing loss, and didn't even notice until my roommate finds me in the aisle being yelled at, and explained to the manager he's deaf and doesn't work here, resulting in an apology and a gift card. Well, this is an extension of that previous story, but it's short and sweet. My hubby's stimulus check didn't hit his Walmart debit card like it was supposed to, so it got sent back to the IRS, resulting in him having to have a check sent to him. He gets said check in the mail, and we want to go cash it. So our hippie neighbors agree to drive us there and wait, knowing we're going to get a little shopping too. This was already told to them prior that we'll get a few things. So, while my hubby is waiting in line at the service desk, and subsequently having the employee screw things up and screw him out of some money, deposit this to my card, and she makes it out cash and charges him for it. "Oh, I can put it on the card for you." Charges him more to put it on the card. Jesus Christ. So, while he's doing that, I have a buggy and I'm zooming around the store, just grabbing all the items requested of me, and that singular manager that had previously chewed me out was waving to get my attention, instead of tapping me on the shoulder. I get more waves now than shoulder taps, which I'm fine with, if you're patient for me to see and notice you. The manager signs to me, "Me learning signing, you deaf, no here, me here, you understand me?" Of course I said, "Yes, I understand you," verbally. The manager smiles and signs, "Help you?" To which I said, "No thanks, I'm fine. I'm rather used to locating things on my own." And she signs, "Nice day," and leaves with a smile. So she went from raging at me, mistaking me for an employee, and giving me a discount for her mistake, to learning to sign and apparently eager to show what she's learned. I'm not even mad. I think more people should learn how to sign. I mean, you could learn any language for a second language, but you're less likely to actually go to France or Japan than you are to literally lose your hearing. So learning to sign is a great option and does count as a second language on your resume. Overall, I just find it neat how a previous I Don't Work Here Lady situation evolved into something being inspired and motivated to learn a whole new language. Right, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this I Don't Work Here Lady series. It's been a nice one so far, and I'm keen to read more in the future. Tell me what you guys thought about this one down in the comments. As always, I love your faces, and I'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to go onto my channel, and on the right side of it, you can subscribe to Storyhawk. If you're on the phone, you just click on my profile, click channels on there. There's Markee too, I'm going to be uploading on that soon, and there's also Storyhawk, which is my mate. If you can show him some love, I'd love you for that. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.